Chapter 475. After Song Jia left, Song Tai and the rest continued standing there. A cold light flickered in Song Tai's eyes as he stated, "A single word of rebuttal, that's going too far. Pass down my command, the Song clan is to be disbanded. Within a day, everyone is to leave Luo City." The gazes of the crowd froze as they stared at Song Tai. Someone called out, "Clan Lord." Initially, I wanted to use resources to exchange for the Song clan's forgiveness. But now, it seems like that was nothing but a fool's dream. Let's disband. In the future, no matter what happens, we won't implicate the Song clan. Song Tai's eyes flashed with coldness. He had already made his decision. The strong preyed on the weak. They could only lament the fact that the Song clan was too weak. The crowd dispersed. The manager who brought Qin Wendy in to collect the wine was also in low spirits, wanting to drown his sorrows with wine. However, when he arrived at the wine cellar, he suddenly froze. The wine cellar was completely empty. There wasn't even a single jug of wine left. That brat is too much. He actually dared to fish in troubled waters. The manager shook his head and sighed. What he didn't know was that right now, Qin Wenyan had been following the black-robed middle-aged man all the way out of Luo City. The black-robed middle-aged man only brought Song Jia with him, and had no intention to deal with Song Jia. The black-robed middle-aged man had a cultivation base at the peak of the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper. His speed was incomparably fast, covering a distance of 100,000 miles in a single day. Qin Wenyan forcibly followed behind him for an entire day. An ancient city appeared in front of them. This city was even more vast and was countless times grander than Luo City. It was probably comparable to a main city of the 9-state city. The black-robed middle-aged man sped forwards, but at this moment, a voice drifted into his ears. "What a beautiful woman." "Imichem?" The black-robed middle-aged man frowned. He halted his steps and turned his head, only to feel a surge of aura drifting over. Evidently, there was someone behind him. "Leave the beauty behind, you scram." A cold voice rang out, causing the black-robed middle-aged man to snort coldly. A surge of sword intent abruptly gushed forth from him, incomparably tyrannical. Boom. At this moment, the black-robed middle-aged man's mind abruptly shuddered as a terrifying sword might directly penetrated his mind, causing his countenance to instantly turn pale. A sword cultivator, such a mandate of swords. How powerful! The black-robed middle-aged man clapped his hands and was about to draw his sword. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the sky. This figure was wearing a long robe and his face was slightly blurry, as if it was difficult to see through him. The black-robed middle-aged man groaned in pain as a towering sword might directly press down on his mind, penetrating through his body. The sword he was about to unsheath was actually forced back into its scabbard, as though it was no longer under his control. Such a will was too terrifying. "Who are you?" The middle-aged man in black raised his head and asked. His expression was slightly ugly. "You don't deserve to know. Scram, or I'll kill you." The figure in the air coldly spoke. The black-robed middle-aged man clenched his fists as he turned and soared into the skies. The sword intent radiating from him howled madly as it shot toward Song Jia. "Impudent!" The figure in the air stomped down once more as an even more terrifying sword might penetrated through his body. The black-robed middle-aged man groaned in pain as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. The sword he shot toward Song Jia was instantly destroyed. He didn't dare to make any more movements as he sped away. Song Jia inclined her head and stared at the figure in the air, her countenance filled with terror. This person was so powerful. With a single step, the black-robed middle-aged man was forced back. With a second step, the black-robed middle-aged man was injured. Such a cultivation base should be at the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper. However, an intense worry could be seen in her heart. The tone of this person earlier was extremely frivolous. "Senior." Song Jia's voice trembled slightly. "Don't worry. Although you are a beauty, this lord has seen many peak-grade beauties before. I don't have much interest in you." The figure in the air faintly spoke as he soared into the skies. This scene caused Song Jia to heave a sigh of relief as she bowed. "Many thanks, Senior." Seeing that the figure in the air had completely vanished, Song Jia turned her head back as a trace of hesitation flashed in her eyes. After which, she didn't choose to return but chose to fly towards the ancient city ahead instead. Behind Song Jia, Qin Wenyan sat on the back of Little Rascal, who had transformed into a Pegasus, feeling extremely depressed. He had chased her all the way here and saved her because he didn't want to implicate the Song clan. If he spared the black-robed middle-aged man, he would naturally return to report this matter. But who would have thought that Song Jia actually chose not to flee? Drinking a mouthful of wine from the gourd in his hand, Qin Wenyan shook his head and bitterly smiled. "Who asked me to empty your wine cellar? Seems like I have to be a good person to the end. Protecting a beauty can also be considered a form of tempering." Qin Wenyan mumbled to himself, as though he was consoling himself. After which, he continued following Song Jia as they entered the ancient city. This city was named Xian King City, one of the 7 great king cities of Grand Shang. The Grand Shang Empire was different from the Grand Xia Empire. The imperial authority of the Grand Shang Empire was extremely powerful, and other than a few other transcendent powers, no one would dare to go against them. The 7 king cities were all under the control of the royal clan of Grand Shang. They were the territories of the royal clan of Grand Shang, helping the royal clan to govern the 8 directions. They were the main cities of a region and were extremely prosperous. A royal city could even be divided into many smaller cities, and there were even mountains and lakes in the middle of the royal city. In the Grand Shang Empire, the various powers would send their talented juniors to the king city for cultivation. This was because there were many major sects in the king city. Song Jia was precisely like that. He was a disciple of one of the strongest sects in the Xian King city. However, because he offended a young man, his sect didn't protect him, causing his clan to be implicated as well. After entering the city, Song Jia first found an inn to stay in. Qin Wenyan followed her and stayed in the room next to hers. This inn was extremely small, and the rooms were all connected together. It was easy for others to disturb one's cultivation, and as for matters of secrecy, it was naturally not easy to do so. However, in such a large city, the price of a good inn was extremely high, and one would need to spend yuan meteor stones just to stay there. Those who chose to stay in such a small inn were mostly wuxiu with weaker cultivation bases. They didn't even have enough yuan meteor stones on them to support their cultivation. How would they dare to spend their days in luxury? Although it was a taboo for wuxiu to use his perception to spy on others, Qin Wenyan still paid close attention to Song Jia's every move. Song Jia's heart was filled with worries. She sat alone in her room, staring at herself in the mirror. She untied her hair, allowing her black hair to cascade down like a waterfall. After which, she took off her outer robes and began grooming herself in front of the mirror. At the corners of her eyes, there were traces of tears. There's a beauty in the Song clan named Song Jia. She condensed her martial soul at the age of 12 and stepped into Yuanfu at the age of 18. Father, you all have high hopes for me, but so what? In this world where cultivation reigns supreme, one's conscience can be obliterated. In order to curry favor with the King Manor, the Yin clan didn't hesitate to sacrifice so many lives just to obtain the Crimson Halberd. Outsiders didn't dare to say anything, and they even wanted to make use of their fellow sect members. Song Jia mumbled, tears streamed down her face. Her uncle Li, who had always been protecting her, had died tragically. She did everything she could to get her clan back, yet the Yin clan refused to let her go. They even sent a message to capture her within 3 days, or else the Song clan would be annihilated. What else could she do? She could only wait obediently. Today, although I was saved by Senior, if I were to return now, wouldn't I implicate my clan? This matter, at the very most, can be resolved with my death. Song Jia was still sobbing, and only after a long time did she walk to the bed and lie down, staring out of the window in a daze. A young girl at the prime of her life, who would be willing to die. However, in order to not implicate her clan, she had no other choice. Qin Wenyan's heart stirred when he heard Song Jia's words. In this era where cultivation reigns supreme, there were simply too many people who would resort to unscrupulous methods for the sake of benefits. Although he, Qin Wenyan, was also soaked in blood. As a human, he would still protect the purity of his heart. Seems like there won't be any trouble tonight, Qin Wenyan mused. After which, he brought little rascal, who had transformed into his true form, out of the room. Night descended, yet the Xian King city was still as bustling as ever. Lanterns lit up the entire city. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered, and an instant later, he arrived at an inn. Inside an inn, the information network was the best, and it was the easiest place for him to gather information. After sitting in the inn for a moment, he saw a person who loved to gossip departing. Hence, he followed after him and blocked the path of that person in a corner. "Sir, what's the matter?" That person frowned when he saw Qin Wenyan blocking his way. He released his aura at the peak of Yuanfu. Qin Wenyan coldly snorted, his words penetrating deep into the depths of his heart. His eyes flickered with a cold light, causing his entire body to tremble. He knew that he had met a terrifying character. "Senior, what can I do for you?" That person's attitude instantly changed. "What is this scarlet halberd? What did the Yin clan do for it?" Qin Wenyan asked, his words causing that person's countenance to stiffen. He glanced to his left and right, and only after confirming that there was no one else did he reply, "Senior, the scarlet halberd is the scarlet demon halberd. This halberd was forged by a 5th-ranked weaponsmith, Grandmaster Qi Yezi. The Xian King's manners Shang Qi was extremely powerful, and his cultivation base had already stepped into the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper. After a certain young master of the Yin clan learned of this, he sought out Qi Yezi to forge a halberd for him. Qi Yezi was extremely dissatisfied, and Qi Yezi said that if he didn't go crazy, he wouldn't be able to forge the most tyrannical halberd. After the young master of the Yin clan heard of this, he slaughtered Qi Yezi's entire clan, causing Qi Yezi to sink into madness. The young master of the Yin clan continued to force him to forge the halberd, and Qi Yezi actually agreed. However, after the halberd was forged, he sacrificed his life to the halberd, and that halberd became known as the Scarlet Demon Halberd. The Yin clan sent people to retrieve it, but in the end, all of them died. The young master of the Yin clan wasn't willing to give up, and he sealed off the entire area, preventing them from leaving the halberd, causing the entire area to become a place of death. After that, the young master of the Yin clan decided to gather a group of outstanding geniuses to attempt to retrieve the halberd. The voice of this person was extremely soft, as though he was afraid others would hear him. After Qin Wenyan heard this, his heart was filled with rage as he coldly replied, "Since the Scarlet Demon Halberd has already been forged, why didn't the Yin clan or the King Manor directly send their ascendants to retrieve it? Why did they have to implicate the innocent? This matter has already caused the Yin clan to suffer criticism, it's just that no one dared to speak out. The King Manor naturally wouldn't act because of their reputation. Young master of the Yin clan has to settle this yourself. Both the Yin clan and the King Manor can stay out of this matter. After all, they still need to maintain their face on the surface." That person spoke in a low voice, causing Qin Wentian's heart to burn with rage. After asking for the location, his silhouette flickered as he sped towards the place where Qi Yezi resided. Not too long after, Qin Wenyan arrived at a place of death in the Xian King city. Under the cover of the night sky, the corpse Qi here was extremely dense. He stood on a balcony and stared ahead. Under the moonlight, a scarlet demon halberd that was the color of blood could be seen towering there, emitting a roar of unwillingness, as though it was the unwillingness of Qi Yezi's soul. Chapter 476. Qin Wenyan stared at the blood-colored demonic halberd embedded deep into the ground as his heart trembled. What a heavy sense of resentment. This Qi Yezi was a 5th-ranked weaponsmith grandmaster and had an esteemed status. He would definitely be respected by others, but who would have thought that the young master of the Yin clan would be such a silk pants, forcing a 5th-ranked weaponsmith grandmaster into such a desperate situation, killing his entire clan and even sacrificing his blood to the halberd. Even after his death, he still wanted to kill the young master of the Yin clan. Hence, those who tried to retrieve the halberd were all killed. Who would have thought that the young master of the Yin clan would be so lucky to have escaped and sealed this entire region, wanting to see what was so strange about the halberd, causing the deaths of so many people. With a flicker of his silhouette, Qin Wenyan dashed towards the direction of the Scarlet Demon halberd. The nearer he got to the halberd, the more he felt a terrifying energy affecting his state of mind, causing his heart to feel uneasy as well as irritable. Finally, Qin Wenyan arrived near the Scarlet Demon halberd. Abruptly, he only felt a blood-colored glow enveloping him. The sky was incomparably dark, and the surroundings were littered with skeletons. Blood dyed the heavens and earth red, and numerous terrifying demons howled as they rushed towards him. A ghost with disheveled hair dashed towards him, its eyes filled with hatred, causing the hearts of those who saw it to tremble. Beams of blood-colored light gushed into Qin Wenyan's sea of consciousness. However, his eyes were clear as he calmly stared at the vengeful spirit in front of him. He then spoke in a low voice, "Senior, my state of heart will not be affected by dream intents." At this moment, Qin Wenyan already knew what sort of energy this was. Qi Yezi was most definitely proficient in dream intents as well. He was able to seep into the minds of others, causing them to fall into a trance. It was just that when Qin Wenyan was tempering himself in the royal tomb, he had already experienced how terrifying the dreamscape was. Right now, Qi Yezi's dream intents had no way to affect his state of heart. That departed spirit seemed to be unwilling to give up. It continued howling as it lunged towards Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan silently shook his head as he spoke in a low voice. "Senior's resentment has already caused so many deaths, yet your enemy is still safe and sound. Why must you do this?" As the sound of his voice faded, Qin Wenyan continued stepping forwards, moving towards the Scarlet Demon halberd. Stretching out his palms, he grabbed onto the halberd as he faintly stated, "Senior, please direct all your resentment towards me." The instant he brandished the Scarlet Demon halberd in his hands, a towering amount of resentment gushed towards him. His mind was in a state of chaos. This dream devil intent was trying to shake his memories. However, Qin Wenyan's state of mind was too tough. His resistance to this kind of power could only be described as terrifying. That time in the royal tomb, to him, was like a cycle of reincarnation. It was too cruel, tempering his state of heart to the point of transformation. Right now, this dream devil intent couldn't shake him at all. Junior doesn't dare to say for sure. But if there's a chance, I will use this halberd forged with the heart's blood to slay your enemy for you. After speaking, Qin Wenyan's palms trembled as he sliced open his finger, allowing his blood to flow into the runic patterns on the halberd. At the same time, his will seeped into the halberd, erasing the traces of resentment left behind by Qi Yezi. A moment later, his hand trembled as he pulled out the Scarlet Demon halberd and put it away. "Let this place return to peace," Qin Wenyan spoke in a low voice. After which, his silhouette flickered as he vanished from sight. Early the next morning, the news of the Scarlet Demon halberd disappearing circulated, causing many to sigh in shock. Vanished? The halberd was actually taken away by someone? Could it be that the Yin clan finally sent out a celestial phenomenon ascendant to forcefully take the halberd away? As they thought of this, the crowd silently confirmed that this must be the case. The Yin clan secretly took away the halberd and the crowd didn't dare to say anything, only occasionally discussing it in secret. However, they didn't know that a certain young master of the Yin clan was infuriated by this. He spent so much effort to obtain a tyrannical ancient halberd for Shang-Chi, even going so far as to make a move against a 5th-ranked weaponsmith, causing his reputation to be tarnished. Yet in the end, the Scarlet Demon halberd was actually taken away by someone else. Not only that, there was another piece of news that made him extremely unhappy yesterday. The men he sent to capture Song Jia were injured by an expert and Song Jia was taken away by someone else. These two matters made him extremely unhappy. As for Song Jia, she was currently still in the inn. She had just woken up and was having her meal downstairs when she heard the news of the Scarlet Demon halberd being taken away. She couldn't help but feel sorrow in her heart. Most probably, this was done by someone from the Yin clan. "Miss Song, what a coincidence." At this moment, a voice drifted over, causing Song Jia's beautiful eyes to freeze. She inclined her head and stared at the handsome young man walking over, feeling extremely surprised. "Why are you here?" Song Jia saw that Qin Wenin was carrying a pet in his arms, appearing extremely carefree and at ease. I was wandering around and didn't expect to meet Miss Song here. Qin Wenin smiled as he sat opposite to Song Jia. Earlier, Miss Song was threatened by someone, yet now you are free. You must have had some good fortune. Why didn't you return to Luo City? Song Jia's countenance dimmed when she heard this. After which, she shook her head and replied, I understand Yin Qing very well. He wouldn't rest until he achieved his goal. If I return, he would still send people to my clan. At that time, if I'm not around, wouldn't I implicate my loved ones? In that case, do you intend to walk right into his trap? This isn't something that your clan would want to see, right? Qin Wendian asked. Today, the Xian King City will be hosting a treasure-seizing assembly at the Heavenly Mountain. At that time, all the major powers will be there, including Yin Qing. I'll apologize to him in front of everyone and beg for his forgiveness, hoping that he would spare me out of consideration for his face. Although this is an extremely unbearable act, if I die, my clan would surely be heartbroken. Unless I have no other choice, I don't want to become a skeleton at such a young age. Song Jia calmly continued, in life, there will always be times when we have no choice but to lower our heads. If I matured earlier and didn't spout nonsense, I wouldn't have ended up like this today. Qin Wendian stared at the calm Song Jia as he sighed in his heart. Indeed, experiences could change people. After experiencing such a thing, Song Jia's state of mind had clearly changed. I have nothing to do, and the treasure-seizing assembly is surely going to be extremely lively. Let me join in the fun as well. Qin Wendian casually laughed, yet he was sighing in his heart. Initially, he wanted to silently save Song Jia, but now that this woman wanted to walk right into his trap, how troublesome. However, there was no way for Qin Wendian to watch her walk to her death. Taking the wine of others is truly troublesome. Qin Wendian silently mused. Song Jia inclined her head and glanced at Qin Wendian before nodding her head. It's fine if you go. But after we reach the Heavenly Mountain, don't travel together with me. I don't want you to be implicated by my matters. Qin Wendian didn't reply. After the two of them ate some snacks, they continued on their way. When Song Jia saw Little Rascal transforming into a Pegasus, her eyes involuntarily shone with a bright light. This is Little Rascal's transformation technique. Come on, we still need you to lead the way. Qin Wendian smiled at Song Jia. Song Jia hesitated for a moment before nodding her head and hopping onto Little Rascal's back. Momentarily, Little Rascal soared up into the air, flying in the direction of the Heavenly Mountain in the Xian King City. The Heavenly Mountain was located in the western region of the Xian King City. The entire western region of the Heavenly Mountain was surrounded by a mountain range that extended far into the distance. Although there were countless experts in the Xian King City, there were still many mysterious places in the Heavenly Mountain range that had yet to be explored. Many secluded cultivators would choose to cultivate in the Heavenly Mountain range. And precisely because of the mysteriousness of the Heavenly Mountain, there would often be strange treasures appearing there. As time passed, the Heavenly Mountain range would host a treasure-seizing assembly once every half a year. On the main peak of the Heavenly Mountain, the number of people who came here to trade their treasures was innumerable. However, at this moment, Song Jia wasn't in the mood to do so. She walked on the mountain path as she spoke to Qin Wendian. The treasure-seizing assembly every year is divided into different levels. Those at the Yuanfu realm and below would be gathered at the foot of the mountain. Those below the 6th level of Heavenly Dipper would be gathered at the waist of the mountain. Yin Cheng's cultivation base has already broken through to the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper. For this year's treasure-seizing assembly, he would definitely invite some of the major powers in the Xian King City to gather at the waist of the mountain, sending people to appraise their treasures. This has always been their style. Song Jia slowly spoke. Let's part ways here. I'll head to the waist of the mountain. You don't need to care about me anymore. Qin Wendian nodded his head lightly. Song Jia didn't expect him to agree so readily, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of disappointment in her heart. When humans were in despair, they would always want to find something to rely on. Although she didn't want to implicate Qin Wendian, but seeing how Qin Wenyan didn't even bother to say a word of pleasantries, she couldn't help but feel hurt. Turning around, Song Jia let out a bitter smile before leaving the area. Little Rascal had already reverted back to its original form and was carried in Qin Wentian's embrace. As they walked on the mountain path, Qin Wentian's perception extended outwards, and an instant later he arrived before a stall. "Old man, are these divine inscription scrolls?" Qin Wenyan glanced at the ancient scrolls on the ground as he asked the old man standing in front of the stall. "Little fellow, your judgment isn't bad. You should have some understanding of divine inscriptions. These scrolls are inscribed with a shield of divine inscriptions that can withstand an attack from experts below the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper. It's not a bad life-saving treasure." The old man stroked his beard as he smiled. Qin Wenyan lightly shook his head. To him, these scrolls weren't of much use. No matter how powerful the divine inscriptions were, they wouldn't be of much use. If he really met an opponent he couldn't defeat, these scrolls would be used up in a single attack and he wouldn't be able to escape. Unless, during a chaotic battle, these scrolls would be of great use. "Are there any divine inscription scrolls that contain the power of space and are capable of teleportation?" Qin Wenyan asked. Although he could inscribe divine inscriptions, he wasn't proficient in spatial energy. Back then, Qin Zheng had one, and when he was cultivating in the 36 mountain peaks, he was able to ascend any of the mountains. "Nope." The old man shook his head. "Not only do you need to be proficient in divine inscriptions, you also need to be a grandmaster proficient in spatial energy in order to create these scrolls. Depending on the teleportation effect, the value of these scrolls will be different. Divine inscriptions that can allow you to teleport across long distances are priceless. You need to go to the mountain waste and try your luck. But even if there are any, I'm afraid you won't be able to obtain them." "Thank you, old man, for your guidance." Qin Wenyan clasped his hands as he casually smiled. After which he slowly walked towards the mountain waste. He naturally knew how valuable the divine inscriptions he spoke of were. But now that he was roaming the world, it would be even better if he had some life-saving treasures. Chapter 477. There was naturally a reason why the Heavenly Mountain Treasure Seizing Assembly used the words treasure seizing. This time around, it wasn't a simple gathering. There were two truly important locations. One was at the peak of the mountain. It was the gathering place for those at the peak of the Heavenly Dipper Sovereigns. That place was extremely mysterious and wasn't open to those below the 6th level of Heavenly Dipper. Because some of the treasures that appeared there might be exceedingly valuable, there might even be celestial phenomenon ascendants participating. The other location was located at the waist of the mountain. Just like what Song Jia had said to Qin Wenyan, Yinqing invited everyone to gather there. In truth, it wasn't just Yinqing, it was the famous characters of the Xian King city who would all gather there to seize treasures. As for the treasure-seizing assembly, it meant that there would be people competing for treasures. The person presenting the treasure would weigh the value of the treasure and call out the item he wanted to trade. Given the number of people gathered there, as long as you could take out a valuable treasure, you wouldn't need to worry that there wouldn't be people competing for it. You would definitely be able to leave in satisfaction. This was the so-called treasure seizing. For every treasure seizing assembly, because the peak of the mountain was too high, it was extremely mysterious and ordinary people had no way to observe it. Hence, the treasure seizing assembly held at the waist of the mountain would always be the most popular. Qin Wenyan continued up the mountain path. But how high was his vision? He naturally wouldn't be interested in these ordinary items. During these years, he had fought in the wind and rain and had accumulated quite a bit of wealth. If he could exchange for some of the items he needed during the treasure-seizing assembly, he wouldn't have come here in vain. At the waist of the mountain, there was an extremely large piece of flat land that resembled a long corridor that extended all the way to the main peak of the heavenly mountain. This place was a boiling cauldron of voices as tens of thousands of people gathered here to spectate. There was only a single ancient path in the center, that was the path used by those presenting treasures. Following the ancient path, there was a vast empty space in the center. Those presenting treasures could walk there and take out their treasures, calling out the items they wanted to trade for. Looking further ahead, there should have been a precipice. However, at the side of the precipice, numerous pavilions could be seen. There were many silhouettes sitting there, drinking tea and chatting. These people were the key characters of the treasure-seizing assembly and were all extremely famous in the Xian King city. Only they had the qualifications to appear here. They were the main characters of the treasure-seizing assembly, because the treasures of those who came to present their treasures would most likely be taken away by these people. As expected of the treasure-seizing assembly of the Heavenly Mountain, Qin Wendian thought to himself as he blended into the crowd. He saw two people beside him whispering to each other, discussing which outstanding people the other side was facing. Qin Wendian turned his gaze towards the pavilions by the side of the precipice. There were over 10 groups there, and the majority of those seated in the main seats were young geniuses. After all, for Heavenly Dipper sovereigns below the age of 50, they were all Heavenly Dipper sovereigns from the peak sects and clans of the Xian King city. Qin Wendian's gaze landed on one of the two main seats in the middle. The person on the left had a cultivation base at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper. His skin was extremely fair, giving off a gloomy and cold feeling. Although there was a smile in his eyes, the occasional gleam of sharpness in his eyes contained a hint of coldness. With a single glance, one could tell that this person was a ruthless character. Not only that, he had an innate sense of arrogance. From the words of the people beside him, this person was none other than the young master of the Yin clan, Yin Cheng. Although Yin Cheng had a grudge with Song Jia, he wasn't a useless silk pants. This year, he was only 25 years old and had already broken through to the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper. His talent could be considered outstanding even in the Yin clan. Not only that, he dared to make a move against a 5th-ranked weaponsmith, exterminating his entire clan. From this, one could very well imagine how ruthless he was. Naturally, the prerequisite for him to do so was that the authority bestowed upon him by his clan was exceedingly great. This was why he dared to make a move against a 5th-ranked weaponsmith. However, Yin Qing wasn't the most dazzling character today. The person beside him attracted even more attention compared to him. This person was a female. Her beauty was definitely on the level of a calamity. Her skin was as fair as snow, and there were no flaws to be found on her facial features. What was even more outstanding was her demeanor, exuding a sense of nobility and coldness, causing others to not dare to look her in the eyes. But precisely because of this, the hearts of the spectators were filled with fantasies of wanting to get close to her. However, they only dared to fantasize about it in their hearts. Every time the gaze of this female swept past them, many would lower their heads, not daring to meet her eyes. This female was one of the most famous beauties in the Xian King city. In terms of beauty, she could be ranked in the top 3 in the city. And in terms of birth, she was a princess of the King Manor. Regardless of her appearance or birth, it was sufficient to cause others to feel ashamed of their inferiority. Qin Wendian's gaze was also attracted by this female, and he couldn't help but cast a few more glances at her. It was the nature of men to love beauty, and it was only natural that some would be unable to be swayed by beauty, while some wouldn't be able to control themselves. Qin Wendian stared at her, but based on his temperament, he only felt that this female was extraordinary. He wouldn't be mesmerized by her. After all, in terms of beauty, how many people could be compared to the empire-toppling Mo Qingqing or the Ice Maiden Qing? Shang Yu's gaze swept over the crowd, and abruptly, she furrowed her brows as her gaze landed on a young man. This young man was clad in white, and had an ancient sword strapped to his back. It was simple, clean, and exuded a transcendent aura. Yet he actually dared to stare directly at her. A sharp glint of light flickered in Shang Yu's eyes. Qin Wendian naturally sensed it, and he involuntarily smiled as he shifted his gaze away. Only then did Shang Yu's eyes shift away from him. Qin Wendian then turned his gaze onto the others. Those who were able to gather together with Yin Cheng and Shang Yu naturally weren't ordinary people. To the left of Yin Cheng, there were several young men and women sitting there. All of them exuded an extraordinary aura, and there were even some with cultivation bases at the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper. They were disciples from the number 1 sect in the Xian King city, the Heaven-Shocking Sword sect. The disciples of the Heaven-Shocking Sword sect were all proficient in sword arts, and their combat prowess was unparalleled. Yin Cheng was also a disciple of the Heaven-Shocking Sword sect. Not only him, even Song Jia was from the same sect as him. Song Jia had once dared to contradict him in public, and because of that, she was hunted down. To the right of Shang Yu, there were people from the Golden Fire aristocrat clan, one of the 3 strongest aristocrat clans in the Xian King city. And to the right, there were people from the Wind Rock aristocrat clan. The Yin clan, Golden Fire aristocrat clan, and Wind Rock aristocrat clan. Among them, the Yin clan was the strongest, while the Golden Fire aristocrat clan and Wind Rock aristocrat clan were slightly weaker. However, they were still extremely terrifying, having celestial phenomenon ascendants in their ranks. Other than them, the other characters seated in the pavilions were all from major sections. Their strength and status were extraordinary, which was why they had the qualifications to sit there. Before this, Qin Wenyin had already understood the strength of Grand Shang. The 7 major powers in the Royal Shang Empire were already comparable to the transcendent powers of Grand Xia. And as for the strongest royal capital, there was no need to mention the fact that there were peak-level celestial phenomenon ascendants in the Royal Shang Empire. There were also a few other major sects that had strength comparable to them. The Grand Shang Empire was an entire level higher compared to the Grand Xia Empire. Now that he was in a king city, although he had many methods, it would naturally be better if he could obtain some life-saving treasures. After all, he was alone now. As long as he could preserve his life, there was nothing for him to worry about. As for Qin, she was much more powerful compared to him. There was no need for him to worry about her. Princess, I see that everyone is already prepared. Why don't we start presenting our treasures? At this moment, Yin Cheng turned his gaze onto Shang Yu as he asked with a smile. Today, I'm only a participant. You decide. Shang Yu's voice wasn't loud, but it was extremely clear. Right. Yin Cheng smiled and nodded. After which, he turned his gaze onto the crowd as he continued, for this year's treasure-seizing assembly, I believe that those who present their treasures will not disappoint the princess. As long as you take out your treasures, feel free to speak your mind. In the treasure-seizing assembly, those who presented their treasures wanted yuan meteor stones. But there were also those who wanted innate techniques or divine weapons, hoping to trade for them. When the crowd heard Yin Cheng's words, the atmosphere instantly turned lively. However, those who presented their treasures here without any valuable treasures wouldn't be able to enter the eyes of these people. Hence, the treasures traded here in the treasure-seizing assembly were all extraordinary treasures. At this moment, a silhouette walked out from the ancient pathway, causing the gazes of the crowd to stiffen. The person who walked out was actually an extremely beautiful young lady. Not only that, she didn't mask her face to conceal her identity. Yin Cheng frowned as a sinister light flickered in his eyes. This Song Jia actually dared to appear in front of him? Those from the Heaven-Shocking Sword sect also had looks of bewilderment on their faces as they stared at Song Jia. Song Jia directly walked to the center of the crowd. She stared at Yin Cheng as she spoke. Song Jia spoke nonsense earlier and offended senior brother Yin, ruining your reputation. I'm here today to apologize. Senior brother, please punish Song Jia accordingly. Yin Cheng coldly snorted in his heart. This Song Jia was truly intelligent. After escaping, she delivered herself to his doorstep. Not only that, in such a situation, in consideration of his face, he wouldn't be too ruthless to her. She wanted to use such a method to protect herself? What a joke. However, wasn't her thinking a little too naive? Although Yin Cheng was thinking this in his heart, a smile could be seen on his face. Song Jia, you slandered your senior brother Yin Cheng in public and you still have the face to beg for mercy? At this moment, a young man from the Heaven-Shocking Sword sect had a cold expression on his face as he stared at Song Jia. This person had already been interested in Song Jia back when they were still in the Heaven-Shocking Sword sect. However, Song Jia was too arrogant and proud. Now that she had offended Yin Cheng, how could she survive? Song Jia gritted her teeth as she stared at that person. This person was one of her senior brothers, named Yang Ting. His talent was outstanding, but he had a lecherous personality. He had harassed her many times before, but she refused, causing him to hate her in her heart. Song Jia, you have tarnished my reputation in public. Originally, I should have challenged you to a duel and killed you. But on account that we are both from the same sect, I shall spare your life and allow you to be my slave. Today, since I am presenting a treasure, I shall be the one presenting the treasure. The treasure I'm presenting is none other than this female. Her value is 1 low-grade yuan meteor stone. If there's anyone who is willing, they can trade for her. Song Jia, are you willing? Song Jia's countenance paled as she bit her lips. Indeed, this Yin Qing didn't want to spare her. Not only did he treat her as a slave, he even wanted to trade for a low-grade yuan meteor stone. I'm willing. Song Jia's voice trembled as she agreed. In her heart, if there was no way out, she would rather die than implicate her clan. At this moment, the crowd naturally knew who this female was. They all felt pity for her in their hearts. But what status did the Yin clan and Yin Qing have in Shenking City? Although many people knew about this, no one dared to say anything. Now that Song Jia had said this in front of so many people, how could she not suffer revenge? Since this is the case, on account that we are from the same sect, Song Jia, I shall accept you as my slave. At the same time, I don't want you to fall into the hands of evildoers. Since you are from the same sect, I will naturally take care of you. At this moment, Song Jia's senior brother Yang Ting spoke once more, as though he was showing kindness to Song Jia. However, an evil light flickered in the depths of his eyes. If Song Jia fell into his hands, wouldn't it be as simple as serving tea? Although those from the Heaven-Shocking Sword sect understood Yang Ting's personality, Yang Ting's cultivation base was at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper. His talent was extraordinary, and in addition to the fact that Yin Qing was the mastermind behind all this, no one was willing to offend Yin Qing for the sake of Song Jia. This female is mine. However, at this moment, a voice drifted out from the crowd, causing the countenances of the crowd to stiffen. They turned their gazes onto the crowd, searching for the person who spoke. Chapter 478. A few moments later, the crowd found the person who spoke. This person was extremely young, only around 24 or 25 years of age. He was clad in white and had a clean and handsome demeanor. His aura was retracted and he was even hugging an adorable pet. The only thing that could tell that he was a Wu Xiu was the sword strapped to his back. This person was none other than Qin Wenyan. Yin Qing stared at Qin Wenyan as a cold light flickered in his eyes. Shang Yu, who was beside him, had a look of disdain in her eyes when she saw Qin Wenyan. No wonder this person was so brazen earlier, daring to look at her in the eyes. So it turned out that he was a lecherous person who used his looks to boost his courage. Now that he saw Song Jia, he actually wanted to take advantage of her and bring her away with a yuan meteor stone. However, the rules of the treasure-seizing assembly were there. How could it be Qin Wenyan's turn to bring Song Jia away? Song Jia started. She didn't expect that Qin Wenyan would follow her here. She couldn't help but cast a glance at Qin Wenyan, wanting him to give up. Evidently, she didn't want to implicate Qin Wenyan any further. However, Qin Wenyan acted as though he didn't see it. He was hugging a snow-white puppy with a smile on his face, as though he had just done something extremely ordinary. As for Yang Ting, killing intent flashed in his eyes. This person was courting death. Do you know the rules of the treasure-seizing assembly? Yin Qing smiled as he stared at Qin Wenyan. I do. If only one person bids, the treasure will be seized. If more than one person bids, the treasure will be seized by force. Qin Wenyan spoke. The reason why the best treasures in the treasure-seizing assembly were only available to those from the major powers was because no one dared to compete. Using force to seize treasures, whoever won would be the one to seize the treasure. Not only that, during a battle using force, death was a common occurrence. Since this is the case, are you sure you want to bid? Yin Qing asked again. This girl is so beautiful, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if she could serve me? Qin Wenyan smiled and nodded. Momentarily, Yin Cheng glanced at Yang Ting as a trace of a smile flashed in his eyes. At the same time, Yin Cheng continued, "Is there anyone else who wishes to participate?" No one said anything. They naturally didn't want to get involved and offend Yin Cheng. Since that's the case, Yang Ting, go ahead and fight this person for the treasure. Yin Cheng coldly stated. A moment later, a smile appeared on Yang Ting's face as he stepped out, arriving at the vast space in the center. His gaze swept towards Song Jia as a smile that was not a smile appeared on his face. "Junior sister, don't worry. I will definitely not allow you to fall into the hands of others." Song Jia's countenance stiffened. She turned her head back and stared at Qin Wenin, her countenance extremely unsightly to behold. Yang Ting was a ruthless person, yet his cultivation base was extremely high. How could Qin Wenin be able to contend against him with a cultivation base at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper? And given Qin Wentian's age, even if his talent was outstanding, it was already an amazing feat for him to be able to break through to the Heavenly Dipper realm. Yang Ting would definitely not show mercy to him. "Are you ready?" Yang Ting walked towards Qin Wenian as he faintly spoke. "If not, if I act now, I'm afraid you won't have a chance anymore." As the sound of his voice faded, a powerful sword chi erupted forth from Yang Ting. His sword was unsheathed as a powerful sword might gushed forth. Step by step, he advanced towards Qin Wenin. His sword floated above his head, crackling with lightning. "Done." Qin Wenin nodded his head lightly as he sensed the sword might of his opponent. The sword sheath on his back trembled violently, emitting cracking sounds. Maybe a single sword strike is enough. As the sound of Yang Ting's voice faded, a thunderous boom rang out. His sword was like a thunderclap, carrying with it a terrifying might as it pierced through the air. The spectators felt as though they could see a sword of lightning piercing through the air, rushing towards Qin Wenin. Upon seeing this dazzling sword strike, the spectators couldn't help but feel pity for Qin Wenin. Those from the heaven-shocking sword sect were all exceedingly proficient in swordsmanship. No matter what kind of mandates they were proficient in, or what type of martial spirit they had, they would be able to complement their swordsmanship. Yang Ting's sword strike was akin to a thunderbolt arcing through the air, akin to a raging tempest tearing apart the surface of the sea. Even if Qin Wenian was at the same cultivation level as Yang Ting, he would definitely be heavily injured by this single strike. Only to see that Qin Wentian's silhouette was different. That sky-piercing sword strike instantly arrived before Qin Wenian. The spectators couldn't bear to watch any longer. If this sword strike landed, Qin Wenian would die for sure. Song Jia's countenance paled as she closed her eyes. She couldn't bear to see Qin Wenian being killed by a single sword strike. Boom! A thunderous sound rang out. The eyes of the spectators abruptly shone with a resplendent light as they stared ahead. They only saw that when the thunderous sword descended upon Qin Wenin, it actually halted. In front of Qin Wenin, there seemed to be a mystical aura. It wasn't extremely powerful, yet it gave off a strange feeling. It was as though as long as he stood there, the sword wouldn't be able to kill him. Yang Ting's countenance abruptly turned ashen. He stared at Qin Wenin, feeling as though his sword was being interfered with. Yang Ting stretched his finger out as he roared, pushing the sword in front of Qin Wentian towards Qin Wentian, wanting to lacerate Qin Wentian's head. However, the white-robed young man stepped forward. The sword, accompanied by his advance, actually retreated a step backwards. At this moment, the trembling sword sheath on Qin Wentian's back finally moved. A crisp sound rang out as the sword was halfway out of its sheath. Yang Ting retreated explosively, only to see fresh blood seeping out of his throat. He halted his steps, his entire body trembling as he felt a chill on his neck. Yang Ting stretched his hands out and touched his neck. It was ice-cold to the touch, and traces of fresh blood could be seen. His countenance paled as his heart pounded madly. Just a hair's breadth away from that sword, and his life would have been ended. The sword in front of Qin Wentian slumped to the ground. With a wave of his hand, a yuan meteor stone flew out, landing in front of Yin Cheng as he emotionlessly stated, "This girl is mine now." At this moment, Yin Cheng still hadn't recovered from his shock. If he was the one facing that sword earlier, what would he have done? The soundwave attack was formless and formless. This person had actually comprehended the will of the Tao of Swords, killing someone in the blink of an eye. Upon seeing the Yuan meteor stone flying over, Yin Cheng caught it and stared at Qin Wenyan as he asked, "Who are you?" "A nameless nobody, not worth mentioning," Qin Wenyan faintly replied. "Since I'm here today to seize the treasure, how can I not have a seat?" After which, he stepped out, walking towards an empty pavilion at the side of the cliff. He casually sat down and spoke to Song Jia. "Why are you not coming over to serve me?" Song Jia froze. She stared at Qin Wenyan for a moment before jogging over to Qin Wentian's back. Staring at the back view of the white-robed young man, she drew in a deep breath. So it turned out that the person who came to her house to beg for wine was actually so powerful. At the very least, his cultivation base was at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper, and his combat prowess was even more terrifying. Yang Ting's sword stopped right in front of him, yet it couldn't even withstand a single strand of sword qi. "Help me massage my back," Qin Wenyan faintly stated, causing Song Jia to start. Qin Wenyan turned his head and glared at her. "Oh." Song Jia nodded her head. After which, she began to massage Qin Wentian's back. Her heart was filled with bewilderment. She didn't know what Qin Wenyan was thinking. Could it be that he had the same thoughts as Yang Ting? If Qin Wenyan knew of Song Jia's thoughts, he would definitely be angered to death by her. This Song Jia didn't want to implicate her family, and after being saved by him, she actually delivered herself to his doorstep. How unlucky could he be? He could only step out and save her once again, temporarily letting her suffer for a while before letting her go. This way, Yin Cheng wouldn't think about her anymore. Yin Cheng laughed silently in his heart when he saw Qin Wenyan ordering Song Jia. It seemed like Song Jia's fate wouldn't be good after falling into his hands. Such a beauty, how could Qin Wenyan spare her? When Shang Yu saw Qin Wenyan acting, she initially thought that he was an extraordinary character. She didn't expect him to be so vulgar, causing her to be extremely disappointed. After Yang Ting retreated, Yin Cheng glanced at Qin Wenyan once more, allowing him to continue sitting there. After which, he turned to the crowd and spoke, "Let's continue. Who else has a treasure?" As the sound of his voice faded, someone walked out from the crowd. This person was clad in black and his features couldn't be seen clearly. Naturally, no one felt surprised. After all, in the treasure-seizing assembly, this was an extremely common occurrence. "What do you have?" someone asked. With a wave of his hand, a furnace appeared in the air. Within the furnace, an incomparably violent heat emanated from it, as though flames were about to rush out from the furnace. "I want 1,000 4th-layer Yuan meteor stones." The masked man spoke. Momentarily, an old man in the crowd spoke, "I want it." However, in the direction of the Golden Fire Aristocrat clan, a young man's eyes flashed as he stared at the furnace. "This item is mine." The eyes of the old man in the crowd stiffened as he glanced at the young man from the Golden Fire Aristocrat clan. Upon knowing the identity of the young man, his expression couldn't help but stiffen as he replied, "Forget it. Bring it over." The young man from the Golden Fire Aristocrat clan spoke. The experts of the Golden Fire Aristocrat clan were proficient in fire-attributed energy. They were able to devour heavenly flames to nourish their bloodline, strengthening their Golden Fire bloodline. This was an innate ability unique to them. Hence, they naturally wouldn't miss out on this opportunity. After the black-robed man completed the transaction, his silhouette flickered as he blended into the crowd and departed. After that, more and more people took out their treasures. Some of them were snatched away by those seated in the pavilions, while others were obtained by those hidden in the crowd. There was even a dispute that occurred. Qin Wenyan quietly watched on. Behind him, Song Jia was massaging his back, appearing extremely satisfied. However, he didn't know that Song Jia was currently gritting her teeth, silently cursing him in her heart. The treasure-seizing assembly of the Heavenly Mountain is truly extraordinary. The treasures here are all extraordinary. Qin Wenyan murmured. After obtaining Song Jia, he hadn't acted again. He didn't encounter any treasures that could move his heart. At this moment, an old man clad in black robes walked out. Only his face could be seen, and it was obvious that he was very old. Qin Wenyan swept his gaze over. He could tell that this old man's cultivation base was extraordinary. This old man didn't waste any words and directly took out an item. This item was a 3-feet-long golden brush. The instant it was taken out, a powerful spatial fluctuation could be felt, causing the eyes of many to gleam with sharpness. This spatial brush was obtained by this old man under a stroke of good fortune. I need a peak-tier celestial phenomenon cultivation art. Can anyone take it out? The old man spoke, his words causing the hearts of the crowd to tremble. This old man wanted a cultivation art, and an extraordinary one at that. I want it. In the pavilion, a person from a major power stated, if this brush landed in the hands of a divine inscriptionist, even if that divine inscriptionist wasn't proficient in spatial energy, as long as he was proficient in spatial inscriptions, he would be able to inscribe a life-saving treasure. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with a bright light. This item was precisely what he needed. He had to obtain it no matter what. I want it too. Another person interjected. I, Yin Cheng, am interested as well. Yin Cheng's lips curled up in a cold smile. This brush was definitely an extremely rare treasure. Even if the price the other party wanted was extremely high, it was still worth it. The countenances of the crowd sank. They didn't expect that this item would cause such a commotion. This brush is mine. A clear voice rang out, causing the gazes of the crowd to freeze as they landed on the beautiful woman in the pavilion beside Yin Cheng. Shang Yu stared at the spatial brush, her beautiful eyes flashing with a bright light. This treasure, she wanted it. Chapter 479. So many people are fighting for it, but Princess Yu is determined to get it. As the sound of Shang Yu's voice faded, the entire space fell silent. Everyone was staring at the spatial brush in the hands of the old man. The mandate of space had always been a type of extremely powerful energy. Not only that, if one's cultivation was high enough, they would even be able to perform spatial teleportation. This spatial brush contained the mandate of space, and could be used by experts who cultivated the mandate of space to increase their attacking prowess. However, it had another terrifying use. If this spatial brush was obtained by a grandmaster who could inscribe spatial displacement divine inscriptions, they would be able to use it to inscribe divine inscription scrolls. At critical moments, it could be used to save one's life, just like the treasure Qin Zheng had back then. Hence, the appearance of the spatial brush caused many experts to vie for it. Yin Cheng, Princess Yu, and the rest all came from powerful powers. Naturally, they would be able to find a powerful grandmaster. Hence, the significance of this spatial brush to them was extraordinary. In the future, they would be able to inscribe divine inscriptions scrolls endlessly, and they could even sell it to others to earn more resources. This spatial brush is of little value to many, but to those who can find a grandmaster to help them, it's a treasure. The hearts of the spectators mused. Naturally, if it was obtained by a grandmaster who could inscribe divine inscriptions, the value of this spatial brush would definitely be different. Qin Wenyan was precisely the type of person they were thinking of. Closing his eyes, Qin Wenyan sank into silence as he rummaged through his memories. An instant later, he found what he was looking for. It was recorded in an ancient scroll regarding how to inscribe divine inscription scrolls. However, the difficulty level was extremely high. The grandmaster who inscribed the spatial brush had to be proficient in the mandate of space. But now that he had this spatial brush, it would be much easier. When he thought of this, he opened his eyes again, and a sharp light flashed in them. Song Jia, help me buy some things that I need. Qin Wenyan transmitted his voice to Song Jia, who was standing behind him. After which, he turned around and passed an interspatial ring to her. Song Jia's beautiful eyes flashed with a strange light. Hearing Qin Wentian's voice resounding in her mind, she silently cursed in her heart that this fellow was really treating her like a slave and ordering her around. However, she still nodded her head and left. She must have followed Qin Wentian's instructions and went to find the items that Qin Wentian needed. The trading area of the Heavenly Mountain Treasure Seizing Assembly was filled with mountains and ancient paths. At this moment, Yin Cheng smiled and spoke. Since the princess wants this item, I naturally won't compete with you for it. I will withdraw. After Yin Cheng expressed his stance, the young man beside him also nodded and said, if the princess is willing, then this item naturally belongs to the princess. I will also withdraw. Shang Yu was the princess of the King Manor. In addition to her outstanding talent, with a cultivation base at the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper, these people from the major powers might still compete with each other for this item. But for the princess, they wouldn't compete. Even if this item was extraordinary, if they competed, they would undoubtedly offend the princess of the King Manor. Not only that, the other major powers would definitely target them as well. Since the princess wants this brush, just take it out. The princess will naturally bestow the cultivation art to you. Yin Cheng stared at the black-robed old man as he spoke. I need to ask the princess what cultivation art this is. The black-robed old man lowered his voice as he stared at Shang Yu. Shang Yu stared at him as her lips moved slightly. Her voice directly rang out in the ears of the black-robed old man. The old man's countenance didn't change as he replied in a low voice, this cultivation art indeed satisfies this old man's requirements. In that case, let's trade. Shang Yu faintly spoke. Wait a minute. At this moment, another voice drifted over. Among the crowd, there was another old man. This old man is also interested in this spatial brush. This old man was clad in a long green robe, appearing extremely casual. He exuded an extraordinary aura. Grandmaster Chiu. Shang Yu stared at the green-robed old man as a strange expression appeared on her face. This old man was a peak-tier 4th-ranked grandmaster with a cultivation base at the peak of the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper. If he really wanted to compete with Shang Yu might not be able to win against him. Princess, this old man is indeed in need of this item. Grandmaster Chiu stared at Shang Yu as he indifferently stated. Grandmaster Chiu's attainments in divine inscriptions are extraordinary, I naturally know that. If I can obtain this brush, I will invite Grandmaster Chiu to my manor. How about it? The princess spoke to Grandmaster Chiu, implying that she would join forces with him to forge the brush. This caused Grandmaster Chiu's eyes to brighten as he smiled and clasped his hands. Since the princess is so kind, I will naturally withdraw. Many thanks, Grandmaster Chiu. Shang Yu lightly nodded, her countenance didn't fluctuate too much. Qin Wenyin stared at Shang Yu, and upon seeing the calmness in her eyes, he silently mused that Shang Yu didn't really view Grandmaster Chiu as a worthy opponent. Hee, it seems like this brush belongs to the princess. Yin Cheng laughed. It was as though this spatial brush was already in Shang Yu's possession. Shang Yu's countenance was calm as she stared ahead. It was rare for her to encounter a treasure she wanted. There was naturally no one who would compete with her. I, Qin, also want this treasure. At this moment, a voice that shouldn't have appeared rang out, causing the gazes of the crowd to turn over in the direction of the voice. Once again, they saw the white-robed young man. The young man who claimed to be surnamed Qin was as calm as ever. He turned his gaze onto the black-robed old man. He actually wanted to compete with the princess for the spatial brush? Shang Yu frowned as a look of unhappiness flashed past her eyes. She glanced in the direction of Qin Wenyin as she asked, what cultivation art do you want to use to exchange for this treasure? The black-robed old man similarly stared at Qin Wenyin. If Qin Wenyin wanted to trade for this treasure, he would first have to provide a cultivation art that the black-robed old man was satisfied with. Only then would he have the qualifications to compete. The Grand Shang Empire is located right next to Grand Xia. The ancient empire has 9 ultimate arts, including the Great Solar Universe art. If one cultivates it, one would be able to manifest the Great Solar Bloodline, causing one's body to be akin to magma. When the Great Solar Bloodline erupts forth, anyone who gets close to it would be incinerated. Is this cultivation art sufficient? Qin Wenyin transmitted his voice to the black-robed old man. Momentarily, the eyes of the black-robed old man gleamed with sharpness. He naturally knew about Grand Xia, The cultivation art offered by this young man was actually one of the ultimate arts of Grand Xia. The value of this cultivation art was even greater compared to the cultivation art Shang Yu spoke of. It definitely surpassed the value of the spatial brush in his hands. However, when trading treasures, the most important thing was to obtain what each party needed. Qin Wenyan didn't care about this cultivation art, and as for the spatial brush, it wouldn't be of much use to him. Hence, he was able to agree to the conditions of the transaction. However, the black-robed old man didn't dare to directly trade with Qin Wenyan and reject Shang Yu's proposal. After all, he had already agreed earlier that Shang Yu's cultivation art was suitable for him. The eyes of the black-robed old man flickered as he spoke. This cultivation art is also suitable. As the sound of his voice faded, the gazes of the crowd froze. In that case, it meant that they were going to compete for the treasure. "Sir, can you give me some face?" At this moment, Yin Cheng stared at Qin Wenyan as he spoke. His eyes flickered with a sinister light. It was rare for Princess Shang Yu to have a treasure that even he had to give up on. Yet this young man actually dared to compete for it? What does the treasure-seizing assembly have to do with face? Qin Wenyan glanced at Yin Cheng as he casually spoke. Instantly, the sinister light in Yin Cheng's eyes flickered with unmasked coldness. "This treasure isn't something you can obtain." Another person spoke. This person was from the Heaven Shocking Sword sect and was seated beside Yang Ting, who had just been defeated by Qin Wenyan. "Do you know that this pavilion isn't a place where just anyone can sit? We didn't make things difficult for you, but you better not know when to retreat." Another person from the Wind Rock aristocrat clan directly threatened. "Since I'm here to seize the treasure, how can your threats scare me away?" Qin Wenyan snorted as he continued. "If you guys want to decide who will be the one seizing the treasure, why do you need to invite others here to present their treasures? Since this is the treasure-seizing assembly, everyone can seize the treasure." The crowd didn't expect Qin Wenyan to be so unappreciative, not knowing when to retreat. The disciples from the major powers all had cold smiles on their faces as they stared at Qin Wenyan with pity. Could this young man be a newborn calf? How could he be so ignorant? Although it was true that everyone could seize the treasure in the treasure-seizing assembly, it also depended on who the person was. The treasure that the princess wanted was not something that he could covet. Indeed, everyone can seize the treasure in the treasure-seizing assembly. Shang Yu spoke after hearing Qin Wentian's words. Her gaze was fixed in Qin Wentian's direction as a sharp light flashed in her beautiful eyes. At this moment, her beautiful countenance was filled with a domineering sharpness, causing others to not dare to look directly at her. "Princess, why don't you allow me to represent you in the treasure-seizing battle? If he is defeated by me, he wouldn't have the qualifications to fight against the princess." At this moment, another person spoke up, wanting to represent Shang Yu. "Princess, your strength is stronger than mine. How about I represent you in this battle? What do you think?" Someone from the Golden Fire aristocrat clan spoke. "You guys discuss this clearly. I will only fight against one of you." Qin Wenyan spoke, his words causing the gazes of the crowd to be filled with interest. Although this person's strength wasn't ordinary and was able to defeat Yang Ting with ease, Yang Ting's strength was probably the weakest among the geniuses here. Did he think that he had the qualifications to be arrogant just because he defeated Yang Ting? Shang Yu wasn't just born into a beautiful family. Her talent and strength were in no way inferior to her beauty. As for the young men around Shang Yu, they were all geniuses from the various major powers. What did Qin Wenyan count for? "What's your cultivation base like?" Shang Yu stared at Qin Wenyan as she asked. "Third level of Heavenly Dipper." Qin Wenyan replied. "I disdain to bully you." Shang Yu calmly replied after hearing his words. It wasn't that she looked down on Qin Wentian's strength, but rather, she was too clear about her own strength. She was the princess of a king manor, a member of the royal clan. She possessed the power of a bloodline, and the innate techniques she cultivated were all top-notch. Not only that, the mandates she comprehended were also extremely powerful. There were only a few people on the same level as her who could be compared to her. In terms of combat prowess, there were only a few who could be her match. Even defeating ordinary 5th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns was a piece of cake for her. Qin Wentian's cultivation base was only at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper. She was confident that she could easily suppress him. You better give up on this treasure. Shang Yu pointed her finger at the spatial brush in the hands of the black-robed old man. She felt that it was beneath her to make a move against Qin Wentian. Hence, she once again advised Qin Wentian to give up on this treasure. Chapter 480. The surrounding spectators all had expressions of interest on their faces. This white-robed young man was truly an interesting character. The first time he appeared, he snatched Song Jia away, causing Yin Qing to be somewhat unhappy. However, Song Jia was intentionally humiliated by Yin Qing, treating her as an item to be traded. Although Yin Qing was unhappy that Qin Wentian snatched her away, he wouldn't really do anything to him. However, things were different now. The treasure Shang Yu wanted, yet Qin Wentian actually dared to compete for it. Could it be that Qin Wentian didn't know that the appearance of Shang Yu here would cause these people from the various sects and clans to hate the fact that they didn't have a chance to display their strength? At this moment, Qin Wentian jumping out was akin to striking a stone with an egg. What confidence did he have to contend against Shang Yu? Qin Wentian's thoughts naturally weren't something they could understand. When adventuring in the outside world, how could one not offend experts? Qin Wentian had long made his preparations. Now that he had no more worries, what he needed now was to increase his trump cards and increase his survivability. The spatial brush before him could achieve his goal. How could Qin Wentian give it up? I, Qin Wentian, want this brush for sure. As the sound of Shang Yu's voice faded, Qin Wentian decisively replied. In an instant, the space in the surroundings froze as many people stood up. A gust of wind gusted over from the precipice, buffeting the bodies of the geniuses, causing the long robes of those in the pavilions to flutter. Their gazes were all fixated on Qin Wentian's location as a faint pressure gushed over to him. This brush, he wanted it for sure? What an arrogant tone. Shang Yu didn't want to bully him. To them, it was only natural. But what qualifications did Qin Wentian have to do so? Princess, let me retrieve the brush for you. Besides Shang Yu, a middle-aged man spoke in a low voice as he bowed to her. Since he was Shang Yu's subordinate, there was no difference between Shang Yu seizing the treasure and him seizing the treasure. At this moment, he was naturally willing to do it for her. If you make a move, what's the difference between it and me making a move? Others will say that there's no one in my mansion. Shang Yu coldly stated. Evidently, Qin Wentian's arrogant attitude caused her to be extremely unhappy. However, the middle-aged man beside her had a cultivation base at the peak of the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper and was one of her guards. She, Shang Yu, wanted a 5th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign to compete with a 3rd-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign? Wasn't this a joke? My cultivation base is at the 4th level of Yuanfu. None of the 4th-level Yuanfu cultivators here would dare to say that they can defeat me. Shang Yu looked at Qin Wentian and said slowly, I've said it before, I don't want to bully you. But since you don't know what's good for you, then, who is willing to fight for me? After Shang Yu finished speaking, several figures flashed out and instantly descended in the central area. Those who came out were all geniuses at the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper. They stared at Shang Yu as they smiled, I'm willing to do it for you. As for Qin Wentian, they didn't care too much about him. Against Yang Ting, they could easily suppress him with no suspense. If not, they wouldn't have stepped out in the first place. Shang Yu's beautiful eyes stared at these silhouettes. Finally, her gaze landed on a young man. This young man had a golden flame insignia imprinted on his robes, indicating that he was a genius from the Golden Fire aristocrat clan. His attacks were extremely tyrannical and ordinary 4th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns wouldn't be his opponent. As for 3rd-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns, they would die without a doubt if they were to be incinerated by his golden flames. Jin Zhan, bring me along. Shang Yu stared at the genius from the Golden Fire aristocrat clan as she spoke. The corner of Jin Zhan's mouth curled up into a confident smile, as if he had already obtained victory. The others all retreated. Since the princess had already made her choice, There was nothing they could do. They could only allow Jean Jean to benefit from it. If they fought for the princess, they would definitely win her favor. Jean Jean's gaze slowly shifted over, landing on Qin Wenyin. The smile on his face turned into one of mockery, filled with disdain. This person was truly courting death. Since this was the case, Qin Wenyin would grant him his wish. Didn't you want to seize the treasure? Get the hell out here. Jean Jean spat out. However, he only saw Qin Wenyin casually glancing at him as he replied, "Wait a moment." Imichem? Jean Jean frowned as a mocking expression appeared on his face. You don't dare to fight? A moment is fine. Qin Wenyin faintly spoke, yet his words caused a commotion in the crowd. Could it be that this white-robed young man was truly afraid to fight? I don't have the time to play with you. As the sound of Jean Jean's voice rang out, the power of his bloodline gushed forth from his body. An intense heat flowed through his body. He stretched out his hand, and a ball of golden flames appeared in his palm. Instantly, the surrounding space seemed to distort under the heat of the golden flames, fluctuating erratically. Jean Jean stepped out with a mocking smile on his face as he walked towards Qin Wentian's pavilion. Many people felt sympathy for Qin Wenyin. In this battle, in order to please the princess, Jean Jean wouldn't show any mercy to Qin Wenyin. At this moment, Song Jia bypassed the crowd and arrived at the pavilion beside Qin Wenyin. Upon seeing Jean Jean walking over, her countenance couldn't help but stiffen. Have you settled the matter? Qin Wenyin acted as though he didn't see Jean Jean as he asked Song Jia. The reason why he called for Song Jia to wait was because he knew that Song Jia had returned. I found quite a few. Song Jia passed the interspatial ring over to Qin Wenyin, causing Qin Wenyin to smile and nod his head as he kept the interspatial ring. At the same time, he placed Little Rascal on Song Jia's back as he stated, "Bring this little rascal out for a stroll." However, at the same time, a voice rang out in Song Jia's ears, "After today, Yin Qing will gradually forget about you. You should return to your clan. If you are really worried about Yin Cheng's revenge, you can just ask your clan to migrate. My pet will naturally escort you out of the city." Song Jia's countenance stiffened as her beautiful eyes stared at Qin Wenyin. Don't worry, given Little Rascal's speed, even a 5th-level Heavenly Dipper Sovereign might not be able to catch up to it. Qin Wenyin continued. Song Jia bit her lips. She knew that Qin Wenyin had offended Yin Qing because he wanted to help her. Why? Song Jia asked in a low voice. Why are you still not going? Qin Wenyin waved his palms as Song Jia felt an immense force pushing her body through the air. The snow-white puppy leapt onto her shoulder, and at the same time, she saw Qin Wenyin taking out a flask of wine as he gulped down a mouthful. It was as though he was replying to her words. There was no other reason, it was all because of the wine in the cellar. It was only when Song Jia met up with her father and found her family members together that the steward of the Song family in Luoyang City found out that the white-clothed young man had taken away a cellar full of good wine that day, but he had brought back an unharmed Song Jia. Song Jia only felt that Little Rascal on her shoulder was actually dragging her along as it soared through the air. However, the person standing at the edge of the cliff didn't have the time to notice her. Because at this moment, Jean Jean had already arrived not far away from Qin Wenyin. The terrifying golden flames emanating from him were sufficient to incinerate a human into ashes. After Qin Wenyin gulped down a mouthful of wine, he stood up and spat out a mouthful of it towards the golden flames. Momentarily, the golden flames of the wine collided with the golden flames, causing the flames to soar up into the skies. The crowd only saw a smile on the face of the white-robed young man. The wine gourd was still in his hands as he stepped out. With a single step, the heavens and earth seemed to sink as a terrifying killing intent gushed forth, causing the people in the air to clearly feel the heaviness of the atmosphere. However, the one who felt the pressure even heavier was none other than Jean Jean. This step of Qin Wentian's was akin to the killing intent of the heavens and earth. It was as though a sword intent had penetrated through his body, gushing into his astral nova. Boom! The power of the golden fire bloodline erupted forth. Jean Jean's entire body was bathed in flames, resembling a fiery god of war. His astral nova manifested, resembling a golden flame lotus. With a wave of his palms, numerous golden flames danced in the air as they shot towards Qin Wenyin. Qin Wenyin stepped out, and as the second step landed, Jin Zhan groaned in agony. An even more powerful sword strike penetrated through his body, penetrating through his astral nova, causing cracks to appear on the surface of the golden flame lotus. Jin Zhan's countenance turned pale. The confidence and disdain on his face had completely vanished. In fact, there was even a hint of panic in his heart. No matter what, he, Jin Zhan, was a famous character in the Xian King city, a genius from the Golden Fire aristocrat clan. This battle was for the sake of the princess of the Xian King clan. If he failed, although the princess wouldn't say anything, she would definitely bear a grudge in her heart. Just these 2 steps had completely shattered his self-confidence, causing him to lose the will to win. Jin Zhan's astral nova erupted forth. Both of his palms folded incantations as he abruptly blasted out. Instantly, a powerful will of mandates gushed forth, causing the entire space to be ignited. The golden flame lotus was even sharper than swords and sabers, revolving rapidly as it flew towards Qin Wenyin. Qin Wentian's body seemed to be on the verge of being ignited. However, Qin Wentian's countenance didn't change at all. He took his 3rd step. 7 annihilation swordplay, 1 step, 1 kill, 1 thought, 1 kill. At the instant the 3rd strike landed, the golden flame lotus directly exploded in the air, transforming into resplendent sparks. On Qin Wentian's body, the will of the mandate of swords gushed forth from his king sword astral nova, causing cracks to appear on Jin Zhan's astral nova as it was penetrated by the mandate of swords. Jin Zhan groaned in agony as blood seeped out from the corners of his mouth, his countenance turning pale. This mouthful of blood caused the gazes of countless people to stiffen, as expressions of shock and terror appeared on their faces as they stared at the white-robed young man. Jin Zhan was injured? The white-robed young man hadn't even made his move yet, he had only taken 3 steps forwards. 1 step, 1 kill, the might of each step was stronger than the one before. Far away in the air, Song Jia turned her head and stared in the direction of the white-robed young man. She could feel the sword intent emanating from that direction, and at the same time, saw Jin Zhan coughing out blood. Her heart violently pounded as her beautiful eyes turned sluggish as she stared at the white-robed young man. So it's him! Only now did Song Jia know that the person who sent Yin Qing to capture her back then was none other than Qin Wenyin. So it turned out that the white-robed young man who seemed to be incomparably powerful in her eyes had always been by her side. It was as though he didn't care about anything at all. The wind gusted by, fluttering Song Jia's long hair. She cast one last glance at the white-robed young man before turning away. A smile could be seen in her eyes, yet her eyes were slightly moist. Chapter 481. Song Jia departed, leaving with tears in her eyes. Although there were many injustices in the world, there were still some kind-hearted people. Nobody paid attention to Song Jia's departure. At this moment, the gazes of the crowd were all focused on Qin Wenyin and Jin Zhan. As the white-robed young man took 3 steps forward, the pressure in the air was so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. However, this wasn't sufficient to cause them to be startled. What shocked them was that when the 3rd step landed, Jin Zhan actually coughed out a mouthful of blood. The Golden Fire aristocrat clan was one of the 3 great clans in Xian King City. Although Jin Zhan wasn't the most talented disciple in the Golden Fire aristocrat clan, he could still be considered an extraordinary character with outstanding talent and combat prowess. How could ordinary 4th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns be his opponent, let alone 3rd-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns? However, Qin Wenyin didn't even need to make a move to deal with him. Not only that, the aura radiating from Qin Wenyin truly indicated that he was at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper. Suppression, this wasn't a battle on the same level. Jin Zhan paled. At this moment, he had a feeling that the gazes of the entire world were on him, watching him being humiliated. Coughing out a mouthful of blood, Jin Zhan howled in rage, as though he was still unwilling to give up. But just as his aura surged forth, Qin Wentian's right foot stomped down once more. In that instant, Jin Zhan felt a boundless sword intent cascading down from the air above him. That formless sword intent transformed into a true killing intent that penetrated through his body, directly piercing into him. Chi! This time around, Jin Zhan's aura was completely shattered. He violently coughed out a mouthful of blood as the golden flames around him were completely shattered. Even his astral nova seemed to be on the verge of cracking. There's even the will of the mandate of sword infused within. How powerful! Jin Zhan's heart trembled. Right now, his aura fluctuated wildly as he found it hard to breathe. Qin Wenin was already not far away from him, yet Qin Wenin was still standing there as though nothing had happened, quietly staring at him. This caused Jin Zhan to feel an intense sense of humiliation. At this moment, a gust of wind gusted by. Jin Zhan only felt Qin Wentian's silhouette drifting past him, directly disregarding him. Qin Wentian stopped close to the black-robed old man and turned around to look at Shang Yu. This treasure belongs to me now. Qin Wentian had won the battle for the treasure, so the space pen naturally belonged to Qin Wentian. The black-robed old man nodded his head slightly. He felt lucky that Qin Wentian had won the battle for the treasure. The cultivation technique that Qin Wentian had provided was even more tempting to him. However, he did not dare to offend Countess Shang Yu, which was why he had no other choice. Wait! As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, Yin Qing interjected. He stared at Qin Wentian as a sinister light flashed in his eyes. This brat is truly treacherous. He actually concealed his cultivation base, saying that he's at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper, using such a deceitful method to seize the treasure. I'm afraid this battle doesn't count. The eyes of the spectators lit up. Yin Cheng's personality was extremely crafty, and he loved to use schemes and plots. His words were undoubtedly a reminder to the crowd. That's right, this brat's cultivation base definitely isn't at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper. To think that the princess would be deceived by him. This brat is so sinister, he deserves death. The various geniuses standing at the side of the cliff all spoke, berating Qin Wentian. From their words, it was as though Qin Wentian was an unpardonable sinner. Only death would suffice to vent their anger. Upon seeing such a scene, Qin Wentian didn't feel strange at all. He was as calm as ever. In the treasure-seizing assembly of the Heavenly Mountain, if one was willing to pay an equal price, the outcome would be decided by battle. The stronger one would obtain the treasure. Right now, although he had defeated Jin Zhan, it only meant that he was stronger than Jin Zhan. Yet these people still believed that with their strength, they could easily crush him, Qin Wentian. Hence, how could he be willing to disappoint the princess? No matter what, he wouldn't allow Qin Wentian to obtain the treasure so easily. Yes, your mandate of swords is so powerful, you must have concealed your cultivation base. Jin Zhan seemed to have found a straw to clutch at. He turned his head, his eyes gleaming with sharpness as he stared at Qin Wentian. So what if I concealed my cultivation base? Who was the victor in the treasure-seizing battle? Qin Wentian didn't deny it. He swept his gaze over to the crowd as he faintly spoke. Yin Cheng's lips curled into a cold smile. Seems like you have admitted it yourself. Since this is the case, the princess must have been deceived by you. That's why she sent Jin Zhan to fight in her stead. If not, given the princess's strength, how could you contend against her? Is that so? Qin Wentian turned his gaze onto Shang Yu as he spoke. Qin, have already said that I will only fight a single battle. I will keep my word. As the sound of his voice faded, a terrifying sharpness gleamed in Qin Wentian's eyes, sweeping over the crowd as it pierced towards Yin Cheng. Yin Cheng's lips curled into a cold smile. He slammed his palm onto the chair he was sitting on and instantly, several silhouettes dashed out from his side, all of them lunging towards Qin Wentian. Seems like you don't place my words in your eyes at all. Qin Wentian icily spoke. As he spoke, a resplendent light erupted forth from the center of his brows. Yin Cheng, who was smiling, abruptly felt his mind shuddering violently. When he stared into Qin Wentian's eyes, He felt as though he had fallen into an endless abyss of darkness. It was as though countless demons were slaughtering their way into his mind. "Do you want to die?" A voice rang out in his mind, causing Yin Qing to scream in agony. Those experts who were rushing towards Qin Wenyan turned their heads only to see Yin Qing clutching his head with both his hands, as though he was in extreme pain. He roared, "Come back!" Those experts exchanged glances before turning their gazes onto Qin Wenyan. One of the experts at the peak of the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper was still unwilling to give up. He stepped out, causing the earth to tremble. Bang! Astral light erupted as the stars shifted. The spectators only saw a beam of blood-red light flashing past. Qin Wenyan returned to his original location, as though he had never moved at all. That expert who stepped towards Qin Wenyan had fresh blood dripping from his throat. His hands clutched his throat as an expression of unwillingness flashed in his eyes. He died just like that? A light sound rang out as that expert collapsed onto the ground. The spectators in the surroundings all had looks of shock on their faces as they stared at the white-robed young man. This young man actually used a killing move. Not only that, his strength was so terrifying. Even 4th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns weren't his opponent. Even if Shang Yu was the one fighting, she wouldn't have the confidence to defeat this young man. Revealing your killing intent so many times, do you really think I, Qin, am easy to bully? Qin Wenyan coldly snorted. Instantly, a terrifying sword pierced through Yin Cheng's head. Yin Cheng screamed in agony as he clutched his head with both his hands, as an expression of extreme agony appeared on his face, causing the spectators to be extremely shocked. What methods did this young man use exactly? Could it be that he was proficient in spiritual-type attacks? To think that he could actually cause Yin Cheng to be in such a miserable state. Yin Cheng's subordinates retreated to his side, yet their gazes were still fixed on Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan coldly snorted, sparing Yin Cheng. Only now did Yin Cheng regain his senses. That sinister countenance of his had already transformed into a sinister one as he stared fixedly at Qin Wenyan. However, Qin Wenyan shifted his gaze over, staring at Shang Yu as he spoke. "Can't afford to lose?" Shang Yu stared at the white-robed young man in front of her. At this moment, she naturally understood that she had misjudged him. If this young man didn't conceal his cultivation base, he would definitely be a terrifying demon-level character, comparable to the Heaven Chosen of the various great clans or sections. Although Yin Cheng's cultivation base was slightly lower, only at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper, his talent was already extremely high. After all, Yin Cheng was extremely young, yet when facing against this young man, he was easily killed. "Since I've lost, this treasure shall be yours." Shang Yu coldly spoke, her words causing the spectators to draw in a breath of cold air. Princess Shang Yu came to the Heavenly Mountain Treasure Seizing Assembly to compete against this white-robed young man, yet she actually lost. No matter how this battle progressed, the final victor belonged to the white-robed young man who had yet to display his outstanding talent in Xian King City. He appeared to be only around 25 years of age. Qin Wenyan turned his gaze over, staring at the black-robed old man. He took out an ancient scroll and passed it over to the black-robed old man. "The cultivation art is recorded within, please take a look." The black-robed old man nodded and received the cultivation art. His will instantly sank into it, and an instant later, his eyes gleamed with sharpness as he passed the spatial brush to Qin Wenyan. After which, his silhouette flickered as he directly departed this place. In the Heavenly Mountain Treasure Seizing Assembly, many of those who presented their treasures would appear with their faces covered. After obtaining the item they wanted, they would immediately flee to avoid any mishaps. After all, it wasn't uncommon for people to kill others for treasures. After Qin Wenyan received the spatial brush, he directly kept it away. This caused Shang Yu to stare at him with a look of reluctance in her eyes. She then spoke again. "This spatial brush has already been obtained by you. Now, are you willing to transfer it to me? Whatever price you want, feel free to state it." The spectators were all taken aback. They didn't expect Princess Shang Yu to be so stubborn, still wanting to obtain the spatial brush. Even if Qin Wenyan agreed to the exchange, he would definitely demand an exorbitant price. At the very least, the price would be higher than the cultivation art he took out. Not exchanging. Qin Wenyan straightforwardly replied, his words causing Shang Yu's countenance to stiffen. She then spoke again, "Why don't you reconsider? I, Qin, don't wish to waste my breath." Qin Wenyan spoke. To him, the spatial brush was extremely useful. How could he exchange it with Shang Yu? Shang Yu, as the princess of the Xian King Manor, was an extremely rare beauty. In addition to her outstanding talent, who wouldn't show her some respect? There had never been anyone who rejected her in such a manner before. Biting her lips, Shang Yu stared at Qin Wenyan as hatred filled her heart. This person really didn't know what was good for him. After Qin Wenyan obtained the spatial brush, he didn't leave. Under the bewildered gazes of the spectators, he returned to the pavilion and casually sat there, as though nothing had happened at all. Or maybe he didn't place the matter earlier in his heart. The coldness in Yin Cheng's eyes grew even more intense. In the depths of his eyes, killing intent could be seen flickering. Let's continue. Yin Cheng's state of mind was also extraordinary. At this moment, he was actually able to stabilize his state of mind. The Heavenly Mountain Treasure seizing assembly had yet to end. The reason why Qin Wenyan didn't leave was because he wanted to see if there were any other treasures he could obtain. After all, he had never thought that he would be able to obtain the spatial brush earlier. Grand Shang Empire had an abundance of resources. Its level was even higher compared to Grand Xia. The Heavenly Mountain Treasure Seizing Assembly was the largest trading event ever held in Xian King City. Maybe there might even be some treasures he wanted. Chapter 482. In the following treasure-seizing assembly, several other treasures appeared. However, none of them could move Qin Wenyan's heart. Hence, he didn't participate in the contest. He wasn't acting on impulse. He would only fight for treasures if he truly needed them. The Heavenly Mountain Treasure Seizing Assembly is held once every 6 months and lasts for 7 consecutive days. I shall stay here for a few more days. Qin Wenyan spoke in a low voice. After which, his silhouette flickered as he stepped into the crowd. Many people retreated, opening up a path for him. Yin Cheng stared at the departing back of Qin Wenyan as a cold glint of light flashed in his eyes. He signaled to the guards beside him and immediately, 2 5th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns departed, as though they were in pursuit of Qin Wenyan. Other than this, Qin Wenyan could clearly sense that there were others staring at him. Most probably, although he had obtained the spatial brush, it still attracted the attention of others. Following the ancient pathway in the mountains, Qin Wenyan's silhouette flickered as he flew towards the depths of the Heavenly Mountain range. Behind him, there were several guards flying through the air, following closely behind him. However, Qin Wenyan didn't seem to mind. Not long after, he found an extremely comfortable cave dwelling in the depths of the Heavenly Mountain range. Most probably, this cave was opened up by a stellar martial cultivator in the past. After entering, Qin Wenyan wasn't in a hurry to cultivate. Instead, he was inscribing something on the ground. After a long time, he inclined his head and cast a glance outwards as a cold glint of light flickered in his eyes. How powerful was Qin Wenyan's perception? He could naturally sense that other than the 2 guards following him, there were also a few others monitoring his movements. Among them, the most powerful one should be Grandmaster Qiu. This Grandmaster Qiu initially wanted to snatch the spatial brush, but because of Princess Shang Yu's words, he gave up. But most probably, he didn't expect that the spatial brush would eventually land in his hands, which was why he wanted to snatch it away. In addition, as the sky gradually darkened, more and more Wu Xiu flew into the mountains to find a place to rest. Obviously, they had the same idea as Qin Wenyan. During the 7 days treasure seizing assembly, the people from the top powers would go to the place where the treasures were presented, while the others would also go to the stall set up by Wu Xiu to trade. Many cultivators wanted to find what they wanted, so naturally, they wouldn't leave so early. During these 7 days, it would always be very lively. If they missed this kind of treasure seizing assembly, they would have to wait for another half a year. On an ancient peak that was adjacent to Qin Wenyan, Yin Cheng's silhouette appeared there. his gaze was cold and sinister, and beside him, there were several guards standing there. "Is he still in the cave?" Yin Cheng coldly asked. After entering, he hasn't left. It isn't just us. Grandmaster Chiu is also keeping an eye on him, most likely because of the spatial brush. The guard replied. "For such a minor matter, I don't wish to alarm my clan. It's just that the strength of this person is still unknown. There's no need for you all to be anxious. Grandmaster Chiu will naturally probe for us." Yin Cheng's eyes were ice-cold as he stared into the distance. Killing intent flickered in his eyes. That white-robed young man dared to humiliate him in front of so many people. No matter who he was, he had to kill him. Since Qin Wenyan had decided to stay here, he naturally understood that there were hidden dangers lurking in the shadows. At this moment, he used his astral energy to illuminate the interior of the cave, sealing it. The perception of others wouldn't be able to enter unless they directly broke through his astral energy barrier. Under the illumination of the astral energy, Qin Wenyan took out several ancient scrolls. These ancient scrolls were all specially made for the purpose of inscribing divine inscriptions. These were precisely the items that Qin Wenyan asked Song Jia to help him find. With an intention of his will, Qin Wenyan took out a spatial brush and unfurled one of the ancient scrolls. After which, he infused astral energy into the spatial brush as he started to inscribe divine inscriptions on the scroll. However, after a long period of inscribing, the ancient scrolls turned into scrap metal and were tossed to the side by Qin Wenyan. How could it be so easy to inscribe a spatial scroll? Even though he was proficient in the art of inscribing divine inscriptions, he still failed time and time again. Luckily, Song Jia was reliable and had helped him trade for quite a few ancient scrolls. This was the reason why he was able to keep on trying. Finally, after tens of failures, an ancient scroll that emanated an immense amount of spatial energy appeared before Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan stood beside the ancient scroll, clutching the spatial brush in his hands as a smile flickered in his eyes. "Although the great solar universe art is extremely valuable, I wouldn't lose anything by using it to trade. As for this spatial brush, leaving aside the fact that I can use it to inscribe life-saving treasures, even if I were to use it to trade, it would be sufficient to support my cultivation for a long period of time." A smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face. "It's just that right now, the distance I can inscribe divine inscriptions isn't too far. If I were to face enemies that are too strong, it would still be dangerous." Qin Wenyan murmured in his heart, but he didn't dare to be careless. He kept the completed page of divine inscription and continued inscribing. The sky gradually brightened, and several silhouettes appeared in the mountain range, all of them preparing to head to the main peak to trade for treasures. However, Qin Wentian's cavern was still under surveillance. At this moment, a light sound rang out, as though something had shattered. Within the cavern, Qin Wentian sat cross-legged. Abruptly, his eyes snapped open as he stared into the distance, as a cold glint of light flickered in his eyes. Not far away from Qin Wentian's cavern, a silhouette floated in the air. This person was an old man, and his gaze was fixed on Qin Wentian's cavern as he smiled. "Little friend, do you mind coming out for a chat? Could it be that you don't know that it's rude to barge in when others are cultivating?" A voice drifted out from the cavern. The people in the surroundings all halted their steps as they stared at this scene with interest. The old man standing in the air was none other than a famous character in Xian King City. He was a peak-tier 4th-ranked Grandmaster, Grandmaster Chiu. Why was he here at this moment? However, there were also those who knew of what happened yesterday. Seems like this Grandmaster Chiu couldn't endure it any longer. He must have wanted the spatial brush badly, but he gave it up because of the princess's might. But now that the brush was in the hands of Qin Wenyan, how could he be willing to give it up? I have something to discuss with little friend, I hope you don't mind." Grandmaster Chiu faintly spoke. After a moment of silence, a single word abruptly rang out, "Scram." Grandmaster Chiu's countenance stiffened. Not only him, the people in the surroundings were all stunned when they heard the word, "scram." Who is this person in the cavern? How dare he tell Grandmaster Chiu to scram? A cold light flickered in Grandmaster Chiu's eyes. No matter what, he was a famous character, yet he was actually told to scram by a junior. Stepping out, Grandmaster Chiu directly walked towards the cavern where Qin Wenyan was at. He initially wanted to barter with Qin Wenyan, but seeing how impolite Qin Wenyan was, there was no need for him to waste any more time here. Instantly, Grandmaster Chiu's steps landed outside the cavern where Qin Wenyan was at. His perceptions swept out, probing the interior of the cavern. When he saw the divine inscriptions inscribed on the ground, a cold smile appeared on his face. Playing around with divine inscriptions in front of him? This person was truly too foolish. Stepping into the cavern with no hesitation, Grandmaster Chiu slammed his palm downwards, directly blasting a certain location. Instantly, the runic inscriptions flashed as a lacerating force directly tore through the area. Grandmaster Chiu advanced step by step, his feet trembling as he destroyed the runic inscriptions. His gaze was fixed on Qin Wenyan as he spoke. "Junior, you are too arrogant. You want to trap this old man with just these runic inscriptions?" Qin Wenyan stared at Grandmaster Chiu as a sinister smile appeared on his face. This caused Grandmaster Chiu to furrow his brows, only to see Qin Wenyan stomping his foot on the ground. Instantly, the divine inscriptions that Grandmaster Chiu had destroyed shattered layer by layer, directly dissipating into nothingness. After which, numerous divine inscriptions that had been concealed in the caverns suddenly erupted forth. Grandmaster Chiu's countenance stiffened as he lowered his head and stared at the ground. These are overlapping divine inscriptions. Inclining his head, Grandmaster Chiu stared at Qin Wenyan. As he spoke, his body directly soared up into the air as he lifted his palms, aiming for the cavern above him. "Do you think you can escape?" Qin Wenyan laughed. Stepping out, boundless sword might soared up into the skies, instantly burying the entire cavern. This Grandmaster Chiu was referred to as a Grandmaster by others. Qin Wenyan could naturally guess that this Grandmaster Chiu was proficient in divine inscriptions. Knowing that Grandmaster Chiu was spying on him, how could he not take precautions? Right now, given Qin Wenyan's attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions, it wasn't a problem for him to kill a 5th-level heavenly Dipper sovereign. In fact, even if it was just based on combat prowess, Qin Wenyan wouldn't even care about his opponent. In the blink of an eye, Grandmaster Chiu disappeared forever. The crowd outside could only feel a monstrous amount of sword might permeating the atmosphere. Their perception was blocked outside. After that, there was no more movement. Grandmaster Chiu didn't come out again. This caused discussions to break out. Grandmaster Chiu had fallen? From afar, Yin Cheng's guards exchanged mutual glances as expressions of shock could be seen on their faces. No wonder this white-robed young man didn't hesitate to offend Princess Shang Yu to seize the spatial brush. He was actually proficient in the Tao of divine inscriptions, and his attainments weren't any weaker compared to Grandmaster Chiu. If not, how could Grandmaster Chiu not return alive? "Go back and report this," one of the guards spoke. After which, the person in front of him nodded as his silhouette flickered, soaring through the air. In the treasure-seizing assembly, on the cliff at the waist of the mountain where Qin Wenyan was at yesterday, disciples from the various major powers arrived once again. Yin Cheng's countenance turned cold when he heard the voice transmission from the person beside him. It was actually a divine inscriptionist grandmaster. Not only Yin Cheng, Shang Yu also received the report from the person beside her. She naturally knew of Qin Wenyan's intentions in seizing the spatial brush. "Keep an eye on him, don't let him leave." Shang Yu and Yin Cheng both issued the same command. Momentarily, the silhouettes of several people flickered as they left the area, heading towards the cavern where Qin Wenyan was at. Qin Wenyan still hadn't left the cavern. He was still sitting cross-legged in cultivation. But at this moment, his brows were furrowed as he noticed that there were more and more people staring at him from the surrounding mountain peaks. "How impudent!" Qin Wenyan murmured in a low voice. Being monitored by so many people naturally wouldn't be a good thing. Chapter 483. Qin Wenyan walked out of the cavern, his gaze fixed on the mountain range as he emotionlessly stated, I, Qin, am right here. If anyone wants to seize the treasures, feel free to come. His voice rumbled, echoing throughout the entire mountain range. Although those people heard Qin Wentian's voice, they didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. Their master only told them to keep an eye on Qin Wentian, but didn't give the order to act. Unless Qin Wentian wanted to leave their sight, only then would they act to stop him. However, Qin Wentian clearly had no intentions of leaving. From afar, a furry snow-white puppy flew over, leaping into Qin Wentian's embrace. This puppy was none other than Little Rascal, who had returned after sending Song Jia away. Qin Wentian hugged Little Rascal in his arms as he stroked its head, after which he slowly walked out, heading towards the transaction peak. However, this time around he didn't head directly to the trading peak. Instead, he followed the mountain path, walking amidst the crowd, trying to see if he could find anything he wanted. Those who were keeping an eye on Qin Wentian were still around. Seeing Qin Wentian blending into the crowd, their eyes grew even tighter, as though they were worried that Qin Wentian would slip away. Little Rascal leapt out of Qin Wentian's embrace and sprinted madly on the mountain path. After a short while, it arrived at a stall and turned its head to look at Qin Wentian as it let out a series of "yaya" sounds. Qin Wentian came over and glanced at the blood-colored fruits on the stall. He then asked Little Rascal, "Do you want to eat some?" "Yeah." Little Rascal nodded. Qin Wentian laughed. "How do you want to trade these fruits?" "These are demonic spirit fruits. They can allow demonic beasts to mature faster. If you want all of them, I will only charge you 104th layer Yuan meteor stones." The stall owner smiled as he looked at Qin Wentian, before shifting his gaze to Little Rascal, silently speculating about the weight of Little Rascal in Qin Wentian's heart. 30, Qin Wentian said flatly. "Little friend, these demon spirit fruits are extremely precious, especially for people who have demon pets." The stall owner said very seriously. However, Qin Wentian had already turned around and walked away. "Young friend, how about 80? Qin Wentian ignored it. The little fellow followed behind him, wagging its tail and looking a little pitiful, but Qin Wentian was indifferent. "I'll bear the pain and give 50 renminbi to my young friend." The boss gritted his teeth and seemed to have made up his mind. Although he had lost a lot, Qin Wentian still didn't turn back. "Little friend, you win," the stall owner said gloomily when he saw that Qin Wentian was about to leave. Qin Wentian turned around, only to see that Little Rascal's movements were even faster than his. In an instant, Little Rascal had already turned around and lunged towards the demon spirit fruits, devouring them all in one gulp. Upon seeing this scene, both Qin Wentian and the stall owner were stunned. After which, Qin Wentian took out some Yuan meteor stones and passed them to the stall owner before carrying Little Rascal away. Seeing the intimate actions of the two, the stall owner couldn't help but curse in his heart. At this moment, he was sure that if he had called out the price of 80 RMB, the other party would definitely have turned back. However, Qin Wentian was also extremely gloomy. As they walked along the mountain path, Little Rascal actually didn't hold back at all. It wanted many things, and Qin Wentian could only follow behind it speechlessly as it paid the bill. Not even 2 hours had passed, and Little Rascal had already made him spend 400 Yuan meteor stones. Even those who were monitoring Qin Wentian were speechless. This white-robed young man was actually so wealthy. Not only that, the amount of Yuan meteor stones he spent was only on his demonic beast pet. Although the demonic beast pet looked extremely ordinary, the treasures it ate weren't shabby at all. Yet, Qin Wentian still managed to satisfy it completely. Wasn't this a little too extravagant? Qin Wentian was also sighing in his heart. This Little Rascal was so small in its original form, yet its appetite was so terrifying. And at this moment, Little Rascal started running again, causing Qin Wentian to roll his eyes. This time, Little Rascal came to a stall with spiritual herbs placed on display. The pure white herbs exuded a mystical aura, causing one's blood to flow freely. "You want to eat it?" Qin Wentian stared at Little Rascal as he asked. "Yee." Little Rascal shook its head, causing Qin Wentian to freeze. He then asked, "Is that for me?" "Yeah." Little Rascal unceasingly nodded its head. A smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face as he replied, "At least you have some conscience. Little friend, this demonic beast pet of yours is truly mystical. It actually knows about the blood shadow herb. I'm sure little friend has the power of a bloodline, right?" The owner of the stall smiled as he looked at Qin Wenin. "This blood shadow herb exudes a blood-red glow. Take a closer look." Qin Wenin took a closer look, and indeed, he could see traces of blood-red light flickering on the pure white herb, causing one to click their tongues in wonder. "Little friend, if you use your bloodline to battle, you would definitely exhaust the power of your bloodline. This herb is able to speed up the recovery of your bloodline, and it's extremely rare. I only managed to obtain 3 of these herbs by chance." The owner of the stall explained to Qin Wenin. Qin Wenin glanced at Little Rascal. It seemed like this little fellow was truly powerful, to think that it actually had the ability to hunt for treasures. Qin Wenin didn't know that the reason why he was able to meet Mo Qingqing back then was because of Little Rascal's unique ability that attracted Mo Qingqing's attention. "What is the price for this herb?" Qin Wenin inquired. "Little friend, do you have any divine weapons on you?" The owner of the stall turned his gaze onto Qin Wenin as he asked. "Yes." Qin Wenin nodded his head. He had quite a few divine weapons on him, and they were all plundered from the corpses of the experts who had fallen in his hands. Not only that, many of the divine weapons were extremely good. "I need a high-grade, 4th-ranked divine weapon." The eyes of the owner of the stall flickered. Although these 3 blood shadow herbs were extremely valuable, a high-grade, 4th-ranked divine weapon was even rarer. "I don't have one mid-grade, 4th-ranked divine weapon." Qin Wenin shook his head. Even if he had one, he wouldn't admit it. The owner of the stall stared at Qin Wenin as he stated, "I need 3 mid-grade, 4th-ranked blood shadow herbs, 1 for each stalk. I only have 2. If you want them, I'll give them to you immediately." Qin Wenin waved his palms as a long spear and an arm guard appeared. A complete set of divine weapons, capable of both offense and defense. The owner of the stall exuded a sharp aura as he stared at Qin Wenin. This person's judgment was truly sharp. He actually knew that Qin Wenin needed a long spear. The owner of the stall was evidently moved as he agreed to the deal. Qin Wenin handed over the divine weapon, and with a wave of his hand, he kept the blood shadow herbs. At this moment, a voice drifted over. Qin Wenin turned his gaze over, only to see a young man and woman walking over. The young man's gaze was fixed on Qin Wentian's hand, while the young woman seemed to be in a weakened state. "Can you give the blood shadow herbs to me? I'm willing to pay an equal price for them." The young man spoke to Qin Wenin. Qin Wenin glanced at the young woman. The source of her weakness originated from her blood qi. Most probably, the blood shadow herbs would be able to help her recover. However, this item was extremely important to him as well. This was especially so after he activated his bloodline limit. "My apologies, I have a use for this item," Qin Wenin replied as he turned and walked away. The young man's gaze faltered as he stated, "Sir, I'm willing to pay an even higher price." "There's no need," Qin Wenin emotionlessly replied. The young man's countenance stiffened as he stared at the back view of Qin Wenin. However, he only heard the young woman speaking in a low voice. "Senior, forget it, it's not a big deal. I'll just recover slowly." Qin Wenin halted his steps as he turned around. With a wave of his hand, a blood shadow herb flew out and landed beside the young man and woman. Qin Wenin stated, "A mid-grade, 4th-ranked divine weapon." The young man started, before nodding his head. With a wave of his hand, a divine weapon flew out towards Qin Wenin. "Many thanks, sir." "In equal exchange, there's no need to thank me." Qin Wenin kept the divine weapon as he turned and left. The young woman stared at Qin Wenin as she asked, "What's your name?" "We're strangers who met by chance. There's no need to ask so much." Qin Wentian's silhouette vanished. The young woman stared at his back as she commented, "This person is truly mysterious. I don't think he exchanged for a divine weapon." The young man shook his head. Junior sister, you're too kind. Quickly consume this blood shadow herb. The woman nodded her head lightly and swallowed the blood shadow Ganoderma. Activating her bloodline power, the medicinal effects of the blood shadow Ganoderma permeated through her veins, causing her complexion to gradually turn rosy. The blood shadow Ganoderma was extremely beneficial to the recovery of bloodline power. That demonic beast is truly powerful. After the young woman's breathing stabilized, her eyes shone with a radiant light, as though she was a completely different person. She stared at the young man beside her as she asked, "Senior brother, will we be discovered by others? It's only a matter of time. Shall we investigate again?" The young man asked. At this moment, the young woman turned her gaze towards the horizon, only to see an expert flying over. Her beautiful eyes froze. Qin Wendian didn't lack divine weapons. The reason why he took out a stalk of blood shadow herb was very simple. That young woman's character wasn't bad. Qin Wendian could tell the cultivation base of others with a single glance. That young man and young woman might seem ordinary, but they were both extremely powerful, at the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper. Not only that, there was a surge of energy in the young woman's body. Given the temperament of many people, if he didn't agree to the exchange, they would definitely snatch the herb away by force. Because he found the young woman pleasing to the eye, Qin Wendian gave up a stalk of blood shadow herb. This was his temperament, he did whatever he wanted, disregarding the gains and losses. "Little rascal, you should be full now, right?" Qin Wendian pinched Little Rascal in his embrace. Little Rascal lay on Qin Wendian. Squeaking noises could be heard as its stomach flipped over, seemingly satisfied. Staring at Little Rascal's expression, Qin Wendian was speechless. His silhouette flickered as he flew towards the pavilion at the waist of the mountain. However, before he arrived, he already saw many people staring up in the air. Over there, several experts were flying through the air, landing at the location where the treasure exchange was held. Not only him, the people on the mountain path were all staring in that direction. There were even some who exclaimed in shock. "That's Jin Yen, one of the most outstanding geniuses of the Golden Fire Aristocrat clan. His cultivation base is at the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper, and he's extremely powerful. Why is he here?" Someone sighed. Jian Jingtian from the Heaven Shocking Sword sect has also arrived. Someone in the crowd stared at a young man with an ancient sword on his back. Not only that, the sounds of exclamations rose and fell unceasingly. At the same time, news from the location at the waist of the mountain gradually spread over. So it turned out that there was someone who discovered the entrance to a mysterious realm in the depths of the Heavenly Mountain Range. Using this information, he came to the Treasure Exchange Conference to exchange for a large amount of Yuan meteor stones. Not only that, those who wanted him to lead the way had to pay the price he offered. For a period of time, this caused quite a commotion, attracting the experts from the various major sects and clans to rush over. The Heavenly Mountain Range was incomparably mysterious, spanning over 10,000 miles. There were many secret realms hidden within, and it was difficult to see the true appearance of them. Mysterious realms referred to newly discovered secret realms. Every time a mysterious realm appeared, it would cause quite a commotion. Usually speaking, there would always be treasures appearing. Chapter 484. This time around, cultivators from the Heavenly Mountain discovered the entrance to the Heavenly Secret Realm. They didn't dare to take the risk due to their lack of strength and decided to exchange it for a fortune. Hence, experts from the various major sects and clans were attracted here. On the cliff halfway up the mountain, dazzling figures appeared one after another, causing everyone to exclaim in admiration. If those who appeared on the cliff halfway up the mountain before were all geniuses, then those who appeared now were all geniuses, the most dazzling experts of the various major powers. Yin clan, Yin Cheng's elder brother Yin Ting arrived. Yin Ting and Yin Cheng were both demon-level geniuses. Yin Ting's cultivation base was stronger while Yin Cheng's cultivation speed was faster. Both of them had extraordinary statuses in the Yin clan. Jin Yen from the Golden Fire Aristocrat clan was the cousin of Jin Zhan. His combat prowess far surpassed Jin Zhan. Feng Yunhe from the Wind Rock aristocrat clan was equally famous as Jin Yen. Jian Jingken, his swordsmanship was unparalleled and was known as the #1 genius swordsman of the heaven-shocking sword sect. Other than them, those from the other major powers were also extremely dazzling. They didn't appear during the treasure-seizing assembly, but when the news of the Heavenly Mountain mysterious realm spread, none of them wanted to miss it. The Heavenly Mountain range was mysterious and unfathomable. In the Heavenly Mountain mysterious realm, great opportunities would appear. Jin Yen landed on the ground. His gaze landed on Jin Zhan as he asked, "I heard that you were injured by someone. Who was that person?" Jin Zhan lowered his head when he heard this. He replied in a low voice, "That person claimed to be surnamed Qin. I wonder what his name is." He was clad in white. "How's his cultivation base?" Jin Yen asked. He stared at Jin Zhan. He heard that this person's cultivation base was at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper. However, he wanted to hear it from Jin Zhan personally. "It seems like he's at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper." Jin Zhan found it hard to speak. A person at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper didn't even need to make a move to suppress him with just a few steps. This battle was a stain on his reputation. "If he appears, inform me." Jin Yen faintly spoke, feeling a little disappointed in his heart. Jin Zhan was also one of the geniuses the Jin clan nurtured. Yet he was actually suppressed by someone at the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper. After this matter happened, Jin Zhan didn't dare to report it back to the Jin clan. At the same time, Yin Ting slowly walked to the front of Yin Qing, his gaze fixated on Yin Qing as he asked, "Just my will alone is enough to defeat you?" "Yes, that person's will is very strong. It directly charged into my mind." Yin Qing also felt slightly ashamed as he nodded his head. Qin Wentian's attack was too bizarre. It ignored everything and directly launched a mental attack on him. "You should have ordered people to keep an eye on him, right?" Yin Ting clearly understood Yin Qing very well. Yin Qing nodded. "Not confident?" Yin Ting asked again. "That man is proficient in divine inscriptions. Before this, he used divine inscriptions to kill Grandmaster Qiu in the cavern. Right now, my subordinates are only keeping an eye on him and have yet to act recklessly." Yin Qing replied. "You two work together to take him down, then meet up with me." Yin Ting stared at the two people behind him as he spoke. The two of them turned their gazes onto Yin Qing, only to see Yin Qing instructing the person beside him. That person immediately brought Yin Ting and his companion away. After giving the order, everyone's gazes turned to the middle-aged man who discovered the mysterious realm. He had a pair of eagle eyes. "Since everyone is here, let's move out." At this moment, Shang Yu spoke. Everyone nodded their heads. Before this, they all chose to stay here because they all paid an equal price for this middle-aged man to lead the way. It was impossible for any of them to head out alone. Hence, they came to an agreement. The various powers would head to their respective clans or sects to inform others to come here. However, there was one thing they had to agree on. The cultivation bases of those who came here could only be at the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper. They all knew that after stepping into the mysterious realm, if there were any fortuitous encounters or good fortune, the various powers that seemed to be on friendly terms with each other might turn against each other and start a war. Hence, they had to establish a balance. They mustn't allow one party to suppress the other party's strength to a certain level. This would depend on the methods of the various powers. Naturally, they also understood that the stronger experts of the various powers would also be waiting outside the mysterious realm. If there were any uncontrollable situations or heaven-defying treasures appearing, they would send people out to report the situation. After which, the various powers would send even stronger experts to enter the mysterious realm. These were the rules set by the strongest powers in the Xian King city. As for the other powers, they didn't even have the qualifications to participate. The various powers would naturally send people to guard the entrance of the mysterious realm. "Everyone please." That eagle-eyed middle-aged man led the way, leading the way. The spectators from afar stared at him, yet none of them dared to get too close. They were all silently cursing at how tyrannical the various powers were. Every time a mysterious realm appeared, it would become a training ground for them. Ordinary people wouldn't even have a chance to participate. Qin Wendian stared at the sky. A vast amount of experts could be felt flying through the air. At the same time, he could faintly sense a few powerful auras boring down on him. There were a total of 6 of them, and all of them had a cultivation base at the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper. Using such a powerful formation to deal with him, they truly thought highly of him. Since a mysterious realm has appeared, how can I not enter? Qin Wendian smiled. After which, he turned and sped away, speeding towards a certain direction with extreme speed. The experts in the dark naturally sensed Qin Wendian's movements. Their silhouettes also increased in speed as they sped towards Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian's speed grew faster and faster, leaping past the mountain peak as he sped towards the bottom of a cliff that was shrouded in mist. Humph! The 6 experts coldly laughed as they sped towards the bottom of the cliff. At this moment, they were no longer concealing their presence. Their auras were all exposed as they sped towards Qin Wendian. An instant later, Qin Wendian stood on top of a gigantic boulder. Both sides of him were surrounded by precipitous cliffs. The other 6 experts also sped over, surrounding him as their astral novas manifested. Qin Wendian only felt his body sinking. That immense pressure bore down on him, causing him to feel extremely uncomfortable. Boom! A figure soared through the air, walking towards Qin Wendian. This caused the blood in Qin Wendian's body to seethe intensely, as though it was about to break out of his body. Die! A terrifying sword floated above the head of a figure in the air. The light from the sword was so bright that people couldn't even open their eyes. These people all rushed over at the same time, instantly erupting forth with the will of their mandates. This caused Qin Wendian to sigh in admiration at how terrifying the combined attacks of stellar martial cultivators were. In a one-on-one battle, although the will of one's mandate was strong, one could still use corresponding methods to deal with it. But when so many people appeared at the same time, the might they could unleash in an instant was sufficient to crush an opponent. This was especially so when Qin Wendian's cultivation base wasn't high. A demonic beast armor covered Qin Wendian's body as the demonic bloodline in his veins seethed, causing him to resemble the sovereign of demons. That handsome young man in white abruptly transformed into a demonic beast, becoming extremely demonic. The demon's sovereign astral soul appeared, instantly connecting with the heavenly dome. Astral light cascaded downwards as numerous terrifying demonic beasts manifested around Qin Wendian. These demonic beasts were all at the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper and exuded a fearsome might, protecting Qin Wendian in the center, helping him to endure the pressure brought forth by the will of the various mandates. Summon astral souls. The eyes of the experts all gleamed with sharpness as they stared at Qin Wendian. After which, one of them roared, "Do it!" As the sound of his voice faded, the various experts directly rushed out, lunging towards Qin Wendian who was surrounded by them. Their wills of mandates were sufficient to crush ordinary 4th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns to death. "All of you, stay behind." Qin Wendian stared at the experts rushing over. A cold light flashed in his eyes as a sword-type astral nova appeared. With a flick of his palm, that astral nova directly pierced into the gigantic boulder. In an instant, the boulder was reduced to dust as the sound of swords rang out in the air. Beams of sword light ravaged the entire space, causing the gazes of the experts to stiffen as they hurriedly unleashed their innate techniques to defend against the attack. However, how fast were their bodies? The distance between them and Qin Wendian was already very close. Qin Wendian summoned demonic beasts directly lunged towards them. At the same time, his palms continuously blasted out in the air, causing the bell chimes and the sword chimes to echo out simultaneously. The sword chimes were filled with killing intent, while the bell chimes were filled with killing intent. This was none other than the Heartbreak Ancient Bell. The 6 experts all felt their hearts pounding violently, as though they were no longer in control. Boom! At the same time, Qin Wendian stepped out as he executed the 7 Annihilation swordplay, killing with each step he took. The 6 experts clashed against the summoned demonic beasts. Their astral novas were all used to suppress the demonic beasts. The demonic beasts wouldn't be able to obstruct their advance. The Qin Wentian's palms continuously blasted out the heartbreak ancient bell. Stepping out once more, an even more terrifying sword might gushed forth, causing the hearts of the 6 experts to palpitate violently. Qin Wenyan brandished his astral nova and abruptly unsheathed it. He took a 3rd step forward as countless beams of sword light swept out. Bang! One of the summoned demonic beasts was slain by another expert. That expert stared at Qin Wenyan as his killing intent surged forth. This young man actually gave them an intense sense of threat. However, at the same time, Qin Wenyan took a 4th step. The boundless sword might transformed into a gigantic sword that slashed towards that expert. At the same time, a boundless sword intent cascaded downwards, seemingly under Qin Wentian's control. Each and every sword strike was filled with the intent to kill. This person held a large axe in his hand and chopped out, colliding with the huge sword. At the same time, both of them exploded. He felt the power wreaking havoc in his body and roared, "We can't let him continue accumulating power." Pff, pff. Demonic beasts fell one after another. Qin Wentian's body slowly rose up and took the 5th step. When his step landed, the entire space had already turned into a forest of swords. The 6 great cultivators were all enveloped within. Their expressions were incomparably unsightly. This swordsmanship was too terrifying. Their bodies frenziedly rushed towards Qin Wenyan, yet they felt an incomparably fearsome resistance from the swords. Qin Wenyan gripped his astral nova tightly, his cold eyes staring downwards as he took his 6th step. The sword forest in this space was filled with sword rain, after which, drops of blood rained down along with the sword qi. The 6 experts watched as their bodies gradually disintegrated under the sword will. All of them had looks of despair on their faces. Qin Wentian's astral novas returned to his body. With a wave of his hand, the interspatial ring floating in the air was collected by him. His silhouette flickered as he soared up into the air. At the instant he exited the precipice, little rascal immediately leapt into his embrace. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed, and then his figure flickered as he chased after the experts of the major forces. Chapter 485. The heavenly mountain range was mysterious and unfathomable, spanning over 10,000 miles. Ancient peaks were interconnected, and there were many danger zones. Occasionally, there would be a bewildering fog formation, and it was easy to fall into it. Not only that, in the depths of the heavenly mountain range, there would be powerful demonic beasts cultivating there. They wouldn't allow anyone to disturb them. Hence, no one dared to say that they were completely familiar with the heavenly mountain range. Even celestial phenomenon ascendants wouldn't be able to see the complete picture of the heavenly mountain range. On the contrary, there were some adventurers who would frequently venture into the depths of the heavenly mountain range and would occasionally discover something. At this moment, the eagle-eyed middle-aged man who told everyone about the discovery of the heavenly mountain range led the experts from the various major powers to the depths of the heavenly mountain range. The air here was extremely thin, and there was a thick fog in the air, causing people to feel extremely uncomfortable. Occasionally, a gust of cold wind would blow by, causing people to feel a chill. We should already be in the depths of the heavenly mountain range. How much longer do we need? At this moment, someone stared at the eagle-eyed middle-aged man as he asked. If it was an ordinary place, we would have long been discovered. This place is extremely mysterious. If it wasn't for a stroke of good fortune, even I wouldn't have been able to sense it. The eagle-eyed middle-aged man replied. He wasn't worried that these experts wouldn't fulfill their promise and kill him. Even if this matter was simple, these people wouldn't do such a thing. If not, in the future, if there were people who discovered treasures or secret realms in the heavenly mountain range, they wouldn't dare to say it out loud. Nobody would do such a foolish thing. This was also the reason why in the heavenly mountain treasure seizing assembly, those who wanted to seize treasures would engage in a life-and-death battle. For example, before this, there were many who targeted Qin Wenyan, but these people wouldn't target the person who presented the treasures. Once this happened, the Heavenly Mountain Treasure Seizing Assembly would only exist in name. Upon hearing the words of the eagle-eyed middle-aged man, the others nodded their heads and continued on their way. This group of people was extremely majestic. There were at least a few hundred of them. There were a total of 8 major powers participating, and each of them had at least 30 experts at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper. As for those who weren't from the major powers, they couldn't afford to antagonize these existences, and they were also worried that they might encounter danger in the depths of the Heavenly Mountain range. Hence, they naturally didn't dare to follow them. However, there was one person who was silently following these experts. His perception was tracking him, but no one noticed him. After a period of time, everyone arrived at a mystical place. This place was filled with the spiritual chi of the Heavenly Mountain range. It was square-shaped and the 8 mountain peaks were extremely symmetrical, separated into 8 corners. In the center, there was a gigantic ancient mountain. This mountain sat on the ground, exuding an ancient aura, as though it had existed for countless years. "We're here." The eagle-eyed middle-aged man spoke, his words causing looks of bewilderment to flicker in the eyes of the crowd. After which, they only saw the eagle-eyed middle-aged man pointing to a certain location in the ancient mountain. "Look at that gigantic boulder at the waist of the mountain. It's shaped like a gate. If you hit it, you will be able to enter the mysterious realm." The crowd's eyes flickered with sharpness. This mystical realm was located within an ancient mountain, yet it was actually so miraculous? "Go and try." Yin Cheng spoke to one of them. After that, the silhouette of one of them flickered as he dashed towards the gigantic boulder the eagle-eyed man was pointing at. In an instant, his silhouette vanished from the spot where he stood. It's true. The eyes of the crowd gleamed with sharpness. A mountain was actually the entrance to the mysterious realm? This was even more miraculous compared to the other mysterious realms they had encountered before. "Have you entered before?" Yin Ting asked the eagle-eyed middle-aged man. "Naturally. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't be able to see through the gate at all. I just so happened to enter. The mysterious realm is incomparably vast, and I was attacked by a 4th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign, hence I immediately exited." "Right." Yin Ting nodded. With a wave of his hand, several Yuan meteor stones flew towards the eagle-eyed middle-aged man. The leaders of the other powers all waved their hands as Yuan meteor stones flew into the hands of the eagle-eyed middle-aged man, causing a radiant smile to appear on his face. These Yuan meteor stones were sufficient for him to cultivate for a very long time. "I'll take my leave then." After keeping the Yuan meteor stones, the eagle-eyed middle-aged man silently retreated. The others exchanged glances before their gazes landed on those from the Central King's manor. Besides Shang Yu, there was a young man exuding an imposing aura. This man was extremely famous in Xian King City, Shang Qi, or Prince Qi. Back then, Yin Qing wanted to curry favor with him, wanting to gift him an ancient halberd. This was the reason why he sought out Grandmaster Qi Yezi, resulting in a bloody incident that left a bad reputation for the Yin clan. "Prince Qi, everyone from the Central King's manor, please enter first." Someone spoke. Shang Qi nodded his head, waving his hands as several people entered the ancient mountain. Not too long after, the silhouettes all disappeared. Each power left behind 2 people to guard the entrance, causing the entire space to turn silent. There was no movement from within the ancient mountain. It was as though those people had vanished. It was extremely mysterious. After a period of time, the sound of wind could be heard from afar. "Who is it?" The guards at the entrance coldly snorted. However, they only saw a beam of light flying over, so fast that they couldn't even see its shadow. "Bzz." The humming of a sword could be heard as a terrifying sword chi swept through the air, causing the guards to all retreat. After which, they only saw the entrance of the ancient mountain flickering with astral light as a silhouette directly walked into the ancient mountain. That's the power of teleportation. The guards exchanged glances, only to hear one of them asking, "Should we enter?" "No need, it's useless even if we enter." Although this person is proficient in teleportation, his aura isn't too strong. Given the strength of the people inside, they should be able to deal with him. "There's no need for us to worry," a person replied, his words causing the others to nod their heads. Most probably, it wouldn't be long before the experts from the various sects and clans arrived. Qin Wenyin stepped into the ancient mountain, and the scene before him was instantly stunned. Blue skies, white clouds drifting about, mountains, rivers, and ancient trees. How could this be the interior of a mountain? It was clearly a vast spatial world. There's a hidden dimension within this ancient mountain. What kind of mountain is this? Qin Wenyin murmured as he stepped out. If one didn't travel far, they would never know the wonders and vastness of the outside world. This trip to Grand Shang hadn't even lasted for long, but there were already so many new things appearing, toppling everything he knew. What could be hidden within this ancient mountain? Qin Wenyin mused. His silhouette flickered rapidly, and the eyes of Little Rascal in his embrace shone brightly as it surveyed its surroundings, as though it was extremely interested. Although Little Rascal couldn't speak, its intellect wasn't any different from humans. It was extremely intelligent, and could clearly see everything that was happening in the outside world. "Little Rascal, it's all up to you now." Qin Wenyin placed Little Rascal down. Little Rascal's eyes gleamed with a bright light as it surveyed its surroundings. An instant later, it started sprinting madly, akin to a bolt of white lightning. Its speed was so fast that Qin Wenyin had to use all his strength in order to keep up with it. Little Rascal brought Qin Wenyin across a vast area. If this place was only as big as the ancient mountain on the outside, it was unknown how many miles they had traversed. Evidently, the vastness of this place couldn't be compared to the size of the ancient mountain on the outside world. At this moment, Little Rascal brought Qin Wenyin to a mountain range. This mountain range was extremely winding, resembling the heavenly mountains on the outside world. There were mountains within the mountains, seas within the mountains, rivers within the plains. "There's someone ahead." Qin Wenyin could clearly sense the aura of a battle. Little Rascal and Qin Wenyin instantly increased their speed as they advanced. After traversing several mountain ranges, Qin Wenyin finally saw the silhouettes of people. "It's them." Qin Wenyin narrowed his eyes as he continued sprinting forward. The two silhouettes that appeared in front of him were none other than the pair of martial siblings he had met during the treasure-seizing gathering. At that time, he had even given up a stalk of blood shadow Ganoderma to that female. When that female asked for his name, he merely replied that they were strangers who met by chance. There was no need to ask too much. Who would have thought that they would meet again so soon, and in this mysterious realm? Seems like they had already discovered this mysterious realm. Not only that, the injuries of that female might have originated from this mysterious realm. Qin Wenyin mused. Naturally, there weren't only those martial siblings in front of him. The two of them were currently facing off against a ferocious demonic beast. This demonic beast was an azure ox. It was 5 meters tall and had a gigantic body. When it breathed out, a thunderous sound could be heard. Its 4 hooves were firmly rooted to the ground, giving off an intense pressure. This ox demon was a demonic beast at the peak of the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper, and its aura was extremely terrifying. Demonic beasts were born with extremely powerful combat prowess. Under the same level of cultivation, their combat prowess would often be stronger than humans. Not only that, their life force was also exuberant, allowing them to endure beatings. Although there were injuries on the body of this ox demon, its aura didn't waver. On the other hand, the aura of the martial siblings was fluctuating slightly. "Yaya!" Little Rascal let out a series of sounds. Its adorable actions seemed to be telling Qin Wenyin to look at the thing behind the ox demon. Qin Wenyin naturally noticed the thing behind the ox demon. It was an ancient tree that towered up to the heavens. The roots of this ancient tree were intertwined, and its branches were intertwined. Its height was at least 100 meters, and it occupied an extremely large area. This ancient tree stood alone atop the ancient mountain, making it stand out from the masses. Its life force must be extraordinary. On top of the ancient tree, there were a few gigantic fruits. The color of these fruits was different from the rest. They were actually an earthen yellow in color. Not only that, they gave off an intense feeling of heaviness, as though these fruits were born from the condensation of the spiritual qi in this mountain range. What tree is this? Qin Wenyin wasn't very familiar with ancient trees and spiritual grasses. If Emo Qingqing was here, she would definitely be able to recognize it easily, but obviously he wouldn't be able to. However, with a powerful ox demon as its protector, and 2 5th-level heavenly dipper sovereigns fighting for it, it was obvious that this was an extraordinary item. The Marshall siblings naturally also noticed the arrival of Qin Wenyin. The young man frowned, while the female had a look of joy on her face. She then spoke, "It's you, let's join forces to deal with this ox demon." This ox demon has consumed the great earth fruit. Its attacks and defenses are both extremely terrifying, and its mandate is extremely tough to deal with. Great earth fruit? Qin Wentian's eyes flashed. Chapter 486. Qin Wentian scrutinized the fruits on the tree. They were yellow in color and exuded a sense of heaviness, as though they had swallowed the essence of the earth. This was indeed the legendary great earth fruit. In that case, the ancient tree in front of him was none other than the great earth fruit tree. The great earth fruit tree took 100 years to take root, 200 years to mature, and 300 years to bear the great earth fruit, absorbing the essence of the earth. No wonder the surroundings of this mountain seemed so desolate. It was because all the essence was absorbed by this tree. The ox demon guarding the great earth fruit tree was none other than the great earth green ox king. Human, scram. The great earth green ox glanced at Qin Wenyin as an incomparably heavy pressure bore down on Qin Wenyin. In that instant, Qin Wenyin felt as though he couldn't even lift his feet. That powerful mandate of great earth made him feel as though his entire body weighed a few thousand jin. The great earth green ox king had been guarding this place for hundreds of years. Now that the great earth fruit had bloomed, it naturally couldn't allow a human to snatch it away. It had already consumed a few of the great earth fruits on the tree. As for the rest, it would be a waste if it swallowed them all in one go. Hence, it wouldn't allow others to partake. The great earth fruit was born after absorbing the essence of the earth. Green Ox King, since you've already eaten the great earth fruit, you still want to keep the rest for yourself? Aren't you a little too greedy? The female berated. The ox demon stomped its front hooves on the ground, causing the earth to tremble violently. A terrifying fluctuation permeated the air, causing Qin Wenyan to feel his internal organs trembling. Qin Wentian's countenance grew heavy. He didn't dare to underestimate this demon. The vitality of demonic beasts was extremely powerful, and their physiques were extremely sturdy. Their strength and defense were even more perfect compared to the human wuxiu. My name is Ji Shui. This is my senior brother, Su Feng. Do you know how I should address you now? The female stared at Qin Wenyan as she smiled. Qin Wenyan replied. Brother Qin, this great Earth Green Ox King is able to create the Great Earth Prison. Its mandate of Great Earth has reached the acme of perfection. If the three of us work together, it should be easier. I will control it, you help break through its defenses. My senior brother's attacks are more powerful, he will be the one to attack. Ji Shui smiled. Sure. Qin Wenyan nodded slightly. Alright, let's make our move. Ji Shui released her astral nova. It was actually an immortal binding rope. Instantly, it swept out. The Azure Ox King seemed to know how powerful this astral nova was. With a roar, the earth trembled as incomparably sharp blades directly pierced out from the ground, wanting to penetrate the bodies of the three of them. Qin Wenyan and the others soared up into the air. However, the Azure Ox King opened his mouth and spat out a terrifying prison that trapped the three of them. Break! Long spears appeared in the hands of Qin Wenyan and Su Feng. Their attacks were terrifying, capable of penetrating through everything, directly breaking out of the prison. Ji Shue's body was covered in countless swords, piercing into every corner of the prison. With a thunderous boom, the prison was shattered. Her immortal binding chains directly shot towards the Azure Ox King, binding him tightly, giving him no way to evade. The immortal binding rope was like an invisible net. It didn't have much offensive power, but it was extremely tough. It couldn't be broken. Pang! The Azure Ox King soared up into the air. Ji Shue's body was also dragged along, but her strength was inferior to the Azure Ox King. "Brother Qin," Ji Shue called out. At this moment, Qin Wenyan had already broken out of the prison. His silhouette whistled through the air as a terrifying demonic qi gushed forth. A gigantic black sword appeared in his hands. The defense of this Azure Ox King was terrifying. Qin Wentian's sword sound attack wouldn't be able to kill it. The sword sound attack was sharp, fast and unpredictable, but its true offensive power was on the weaker side. It was easier to deal with the human Wuxiu, but against a demonic beast like the Azure Ox King, it would be extremely difficult to kill it. In terms of pure attack power, the fusion of the mandate of force and the mandate of demonic beasts was clearly stronger. Qin Wentian's second-level mandate of force was the void shockwave ripples. When the void shatters blasted into the bodies of his opponents, it would be able to shatter everything within their bodies, killing through the air. Although the Azure Ox King's defense was strong, its speed was its weakness. Not only that, it was still restrained by the immortal binding rope. Upon seeing Qin Wentian lunging over, the Azure Ox King's gigantic eyes stared at Qin Wenyan. With a roar of rage, Qin Wentian's body trembled violently, as though he was about to be torn apart. A terrifying gravitational force caused his body to sink downwards, causing him to be unable to unleash his speed. Powerful indeed. Qin Wentian stared at the Azure Ox King. Demonic qi gushed forth from his body as his bloodline thrummed. Stellar transposition, his silhouette directly appeared in front of the Azure Ox King as he slashed out with his gigantic sword. The Azure Ox King howled. Its entire body was enveloped by an earthen yellow light, transforming into a screen of light that resembled a statue. This was its supreme defense. Ordinary fifth-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns wouldn't even be able to break through its defense, let alone kill it. Break! Qin Wenyan coldly snorted. The incomparably heavy black gigantic sword directly slammed into the light screen, imbued with his will of swords. A terrifying shockwave of sharpness radiated outwards, shattering the light screen into pieces before disintegrating into nothingness. Even with Qin Wentian's strength, he only managed to shatter the screen of light. Although the aftershock of his attack blasted into the body of the Azure Ox King, it wasn't enough to cause it any serious injuries. However, Su Feng, who had been accumulating his strength, finally made his move. His entire person was like a bolt of lightning, descending from the skies. The tip of his long spear glowed with a golden light, instantly landing on the Azure Ox King's body. However, the speed of the long spear was simply too fast, directly penetrating through the Azure Ox King's head. Piercing sounds rang out as the long spear penetrated through everything. The Azure Ox King let out a roar of despair, causing the entire area to tremble violently. Su Feng pulled out his long spear, while Qin Wenyan similarly retreated. The aura of the frenzied Azure Ox King grew weaker and weaker as an unwillingness flickered in his eyes. After which, he slammed into the ground with a thunderous boom. "It's over," Ji Shue spoke in a low voice. This Azure Ox King was truly troublesome to deal with. Although her senior brother's attacks were powerful, he had been tangling with the Azure Ox King for too long. Although he could break through the Azure Ox King's defense, it was impossible for him to find an opportunity to kill it in a single strike. Who would have thought that Qin Wenyan would be so powerful as well, breaking through the defense of the Azure Ox King with a single strike? Only with the cooperation of the three of them could they end the battle in such a short period of time. Awesome! Ji Shue turned and praised Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan didn't say anything. Their gazes shifted over, only to see that 2 great earth fruits had already been plucked from the great earth fruit tree. A snow-white puppy was lying on the ground, hugging a gigantic great earth fruit. Its appearance was extremely comical, and its jaws were unceasingly nibbling on one of the great earth fruits. Qin Wenyin rolled his eyes. This little rascal, while he was fighting, this little fellow had already started to steal the fruits. Su Feng's silhouette flickered as he appeared above the great earth fruit tree, wanting to pluck the great earth fruits. Ji Shui also arrived at the great earth fruit tree, plucking one and tossed it over to Qin Wenyin. 7 fruits, you and that little fellow will get 3, and the 2 of us will get 2 each. Su Feng frowned when he heard Ji Shui's words. But when he thought of the blood shadow Ganoderma, he didn't say anything and allowed Qin Wenyin to take advantage of the situation. Although they could also capture the Azure Ox King, they would have to spend some effort to do so. Although this great earth fruit was extremely valuable, it wasn't too useful to them. However, at this moment, a raging wind gusted over from afar. 7 to 8 figures flashed through the air, and not long after, they arrived here. The person in the lead stared at Su Feng and Ji Shui as a strange light flashed in his eyes. Brother Su Feng, Miss Ji Shui, I didn't expect the 2 of you to be in this mysterious realm. That person clasped his hands, appearing extremely courteous. Behind him, there was another person staring at Qin Wenyin as he transmitted his voice over. After which, the eyes of that person flickered as he similarly turned his gaze onto Qin Wenyin. So it turned out that this person was the one who had offended Shang Yu before, and even tortured Yin Cheng and Jin Zhan. He actually managed to break through the defenses of the outer perimeter and entered the mysterious realm. Xie Yu from the Ecliptic Sect. Su Feng stared at the young man in the air. This group of people was none other than the Ecliptic Sect, a major power in Xian King City. Xie Yu was a demon-level genius of the Ecliptic Sect. Seems like the other major powers had also discovered this mysterious realm and entered it. Brother Su Feng, we discovered some miraculous treasures in the mysterious realm and suffered heavy losses. Over 10 of our brothers have fallen. Now that we've met the 2 of you, why don't we join forces? Xie Yu spoke. Qin Wenyin and the others also discovered that the auras of this group of people were extremely unstable, as though they had just experienced a great battle. The gazes of Su Feng and Ji Shui stiffened as they exchanged mutual glances, as though they were discussing their thoughts. After which, Su Feng asked, "What did you discover?" "I'm not sure yet. The location of the mysterious realm is actually a Yuan meteor stone mine. Not only that, the astral energy within the mine was completely sucked dry, transforming into a stone mountain. The wind dried it up and transformed it into a cave dwelling. A terrifying aura emanated from it, and there are also a few extremely terrifying demonic beasts guarding it. My brothers were killed by them." Xie Yu spoke, his words causing Su Feng and Ji Shui to silently muse in their hearts. Indeed, these people had also discovered the mysterious realm. Earlier, Ji Shui's injuries were all at the location Xie Yu spoke of. After which, they went out to recuperate before exploring the mysterious realm again. However, they didn't dare to be as brazen as before, choosing to slowly explore it. If this mysterious realm is so powerful, even with the 2 of us, wouldn't it be difficult to deal with it? Su Feng probed. That place isn't hard to discover. Other than me, there would definitely be other powers that have sensed it as well. When they feel the pressure, they would temporarily join forces. However, if a supreme treasure really appears, there would definitely be fights over it. The reason why I invited the 2 of you here is to prepare for a rainy day. Xie Yu slowly spoke. The people here weren't fools. Su Feng nodded his head in agreement. He too wanted to investigate what was inside exactly. Brother Qin, how about we go together? Ji Shui turned her gaze to Qin Wenyin. Qin Wenyin contemplated for a moment before nodding his head. If Xie Yu and the other powers couldn't even take down the mysterious realm, his strength alone wouldn't be enough. This Ji Shui's personality wasn't bad, he could rest assured if he joined forces with her. Not only that, after obtaining the spatial brush, he had already inscribed a spatial scroll. That was his greatest reliance. Even if he encountered danger, he wouldn't fear it. Chapter 487. Xie Yu was a heaven's chosen of the ecliptic sect. Although he was arrogant, he wasn't a fool. Now that Ji Shui had invited Qin Wenyan to join them, it clearly indicated that Qin Wentian's strength wasn't weak. In addition to the rumors he heard earlier, he naturally wouldn't obstruct Qin Wentian's strength. As for the grudge between Qin Wentian and the princess, that could be discussed after they snatched the treasure. In this world, there was no such thing as eternal enemies or friends. Since this is the case, let's move out. Xie Yu spoke. After which, he turned and sped away. The speed of the group was extremely fast. Ji Shui flew beside Qin Wenyan as she asked, "Brother Qin, which sect are you from? Why haven't we met before?" "I'm someone who went out to temper myself. I haven't been in Xianqing City for a long time," Qin Wentian replied. "I see." Ji Shui nodded her head as she smiled. "Me and senior brother are both external disciples of the Qinghua Mountains. We're ashamed to say that we've never been able to enter the Qinghua Mountains. Brother Qin's talent is extraordinary. If you go and try, you might even have a chance to become Wuxiu of the Qinghua Mountains." Qinghua Mountains? Qin Wentian was taken aback. Since this Xie Yu was able to enter the Qinghua Mountains, it meant that he was from one of the strongest powers in Xianqing City. However, it was obvious that he was extremely respectful towards Ji Shui and Su Feng, treating them as equals. But Ji Shui actually said that he was only an external disciple of the Qinghua Mountains. In that case, what power was this Qinghua Mountains from? How strong is the Qinghua Mountains in Xianqing City? Qin Wentian casually asked, not thinking too much about it. However, his words caused Ji Shui to start. Even Xie Yu, who was in front of them, turned his head to glance at him. Could it be that this fellow had just arrived in the Seven King Cities? He actually hadn't heard of the Qinghua Mountains before. Ji Shui casually laughed as she explained to Qin Wentian, the Qinghua Mountain isn't a power that belongs to the Xianqing City. It's just that the Qinghua Mountain is located in the 7 royal cities of Grand Shang, and there's an outer mountain where the outer disciples of the Qinghua Mountain gather. And in the royal capital of Grand Shang, there's an inner mountain that's guarded by true disciples of the Qinghua Mountain. As for the real Qinghua Mountain, it is located in Absolute Monarch Sanctuary, and is one of the 9 sects under the Glory Sect. They are able to recommend disciples into the Glory Sect, and once they are recommended, their status will not be too low. Ji Shui patiently explained, her words causing a look of surprise to flash in Qin Wentian's eyes. In that case, the status of the Qinghua Mountain is equivalent to the Grand Shang Empire? When he was in Grand Xia, he had heard of Jun Yu's identity before. Jun Yu was a disciple of an elder of the Royal Sacred Sect, and this elder was once a king of Grand Shang. Qin Wenyan naturally understood what this signified. The Royal Sacred Sect was like a hegemon of an era. All the demon-level geniuses that appeared in Grand Shang would all join them. This Qinghua Mountain was the same as the Grand Shang Empire. That's right, the Qinghua Mountain is a hegemon of the Grand Shang Empire. If you compare it to the Xianqing City, I naturally have no way to answer you directly. Ji Shui smiled. Qin Wenyan nodded his head as his heart pounded. The selection process the Royal Sacred Sect had for geniuses was simply too terrifying. In this boundlessly vast territory, there were 3 empires, the Qinghua Mountain, and other powers similar to the Qinghua Mountain. These powers were all subordinates of the Royal Sacred Sect, and they would constantly send talents into the Royal Sacred Sect, nurturing fresh blood. At the end, those most outstanding demon-level geniuses would all join the Royal Sacred Sect. From this, one could very well imagine how terrifying the foundations of a power like this was. This was a true hegemon of Grand Xia. None of the transcendent powers in Grand Xia had such a selection system. Not only that, for these powers that sent talents to the Royal Sacred Sect, there was also an intense competition between them. The Royal Sacred Sect would definitely not allow such a competition to happen. The various transcendent powers would also do their best to nurture outstanding geniuses and send them to the Royal Sacred Sect, hoping that one day, they would become important characters of the Royal Sacred Sect. After generations of development, Qin Wenyan could already imagine how intense the competition within the Royal Sacred Sect would be. This was because the geniuses were all from different powers. Brother Qin, I'm also not someone from a transcendent power. But after becoming an outer mountain disciple of the Qinghua mountain, I already have an extraordinary status. If you can pass the inner mountain test and become a true disciple of the Qinghua mountain, no one in the Shenking city would dare to touch you. Ji Shui casually smiled. Qin Wenyan could naturally feel that Ji Shui's identity as an outer mountain disciple was already sufficient to cause the geniuses of the transcendent powers to respect her. Thank you for your guidance. Qin Wenyan thanked as he silently noted it down in his heart. He wasn't in a hurry to join any of the transcendent powers. He already had a sacred royal medallion on him. It wasn't difficult for him to take the first step. Hence, he had to choose carefully. Ji Shui casually smiled as the two of them continued chatting. After some time, they arrived at a flat piece of land. The wind gusted on their bodies, causing them to feel a chill akin to knives. Qin Wendian turned his gaze ahead only to see a stone mine that spanned over 100 miles. However, just like what Xieyu had said, there wasn't even the slightest bit of astral energy within this stone mine. All of it had been devoured cleanly, and the stone mine that was as large as a mountain was dried up by the wind, turning into a pile of petrified rocks. When they arrived, Su Feng took out his long spear. His silhouette flickered as he transformed into a bolt of lightning, stabbing out with his long spear, causing sparks to fly in all directions. Su Feng retracted his spear. His gaze was extremely calm. His spear arts could be said to be extremely powerful, yet under his spear strike, he had only managed to break through the surface layer of the petrified rocks. If he were to forcefully destroy the petrified rocks, he didn't know how long it would take. As expected, it's still the same. Su Feng silently mused. His silhouette retreated back to his original location as he stared at the entrance of the stone mine. Within it, a strange aura could be felt, causing people to feel a sense of fear. Back then when he and Ji Shui entered, they were attacked by powerful demonic beasts. He really wanted to know what exactly was hidden within this stone mine. Xieyu took a few steps forward. Astral light flashed around him as a bow appeared in his hands. Abruptly, he shot out explosively towards the entrance of the stone mine. The sound of the arrow whistling through the air could be heard. The entrance of the stone mine seemed to be so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. Everyone be careful. Xieyu faintly spoke. The entire space was exceptionally quiet, but after an instant, everyone suddenly felt the ground trembling. Their hearts involuntarily pounded violently. Boom! The tremors intensified. The countenances of Xieyu and the rest turned heavy, and at this moment, whistling sounds drifted over from afar. A group of silhouettes were madly sprinting over, and their eyes flickered when they saw Xieyu and the rest. Brother Xie, you wish to enter? The person in the lead exuded an evil aura, giving off a sinister feeling. Do the experts from the Blood Cloud sect want to enter with us? Xieyu stared at the experts in the air. When the experts from the Blood Cloud sect saw Su Feng, Ji Shui and Qin Wenyan, their eyes flickered as they nodded their heads. Since Brother Xie has discovered something, we shall accept your invitation. Let's go. Xieyu ignored the tremors as he walked towards the cave. The others followed behind him as they extended their perception outwards. Boom. That throbbing sensation grew increasingly intense. Qin Wenyan only felt his heart pounding unceasingly as his blood surged. Little rascal did its best to burrow into his bosom, as though it could sense that the aura here was extraordinary. I don't sense the aura of demonic beasts. Su Feng had a bewildered expression on his face. At this moment, they had already entered the depths of the cave. The interior of the stone mine was pitch black, and they couldn't see the bottom. There were also many forks in the surroundings, resembling a maze. Brother Xie, why do I feel something is wrong? What is this place? Someone from the Blood Cloud sect asked. I'm not sure. Xieyu replied, his words causing the eyes of the other party to freeze as he silently cursed himself for being too careless. He actually didn't hesitate to follow them in. Time seemed to pass by extremely slowly. An hour felt like an eternity to them, yet they didn't encounter anything at all. Only their hearts were pounding unceasingly. Something's wrong. At this moment, Qin Wendian halted his steps. His brows were furrowed as he faintly sensed an intense sense of danger. His perception had always been extremely sharp, yet he couldn't sense anything at all. Where did this sense of danger originate from? Boom! Another intense throbbing sound rang out, causing Qin Wendian's sense of unease to grow even more intense. Yeah! Little Rascal let out an intense screech. Its body abruptly expanded as it transformed into a golden-colored demon king, exuding a terrifying aura. Occasionally, the baleful aura of the purgatory vermilion bird could be seen flickering in its eyes. Roar! Little Rascal lunged forward, actually lunging in the direction of Xiaoyu. Beside Xiaoyu, a figure abruptly turned around. In that instant, Qin Wendian saw a terrifying red glow flickering in the eyes of that person. It was as though that person had lost all rationality, and a low beast-like roar rang out from his mouth. Not only him, there were two other people beside him as well. Their eyes gleamed with a red light as they exuded the aura of a wild beast. That person lifted his arm and punched out towards Little Rascal. Instantly, the fist light shattered the void. Little Rascal howled in rage and swallowed the attack with a single gulp, as though it wanted to devour the innate technique. At the same time, Qin Wendian abruptly turned around. He saw a terrifying silhouette appearing in front of him. This silhouette was completely crimson in color, even its eyes were crimson. When it stepped out, it caused the blood in the hearts of those who saw it to palpitate wildly. The demonic qi from Qin Wendian actually gushed forth uncontrollably as the demonic energy in his body started to churn violently. Even his bloodline was in chaos. What demonic beast is this? It can actually trigger the demonic qi in my body and even wants to demonize my bloodline. Could it be that the people of the ecliptic sect were unknowingly controlled by it? Qin Wendian's heart pounded rapidly. What kind of terrifying demonic beast was this? At the entrance of the two caves, another two demonic beasts appeared. However, if one were to look closely, they would discover that these demonic beasts actually had the appearance of humans. It's precisely this type of demonic beast. Ji Shui stared at the demonic beast as her countenance grew incredibly unsightly. She was injured by this type of demonic beast. Demonization. This demonic beast isn't a demonic beast, but a demonic spirit formed from the purest will of the demonic beasts. It can even demonize others. Su Feng seemed to have thought of something as his countenance grew heavy. This incomparably gigantic ancient mountain, what was it exactly? The great earth fruit tree was born after absorbing the essence of the will of the earth. And now, such a monster had appeared in this place. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.